Alright guys, let's go ahead and get started with our stream for today. How are you guys doing? You guys doing alright? I'm doing alright. Not too bad of a week. I'm gonna go ahead and change them. And we'll go ahead and get started. Are things going alright with you? Things are going okay for me. Pretty decent. In a pretty decent mood this morning. And doing some family stuff today, doing some other stuff. So just we'll knock out the stream. Talk about some things. Today specifically we're going to talk about some D&D encounter building kind of interesting things. So we're going to take a look at some of that and go forward. It's something that I've talked about something I've talked about previously, but I wanted to dive in a little bit more and kind of extrapolate a little bit. And we'll talk a little bit about using this one sort of tweak on encounter building, especially if you're a newer dungeon master or game master of any ilk. It can help change the way you think about encounters and how they work and how they flow. And I think it will be really helpful. If you're not already doing this, you might already be doing this. You might not be doing this and not even know you're doing it. Take these off the glare. Get the last little thing set up and then we'll be good to go. See. So yeah, that's our plan. If we have any extra time, because I'm not quite sure. As usual, and I never feel like I have any idea how long these are going to take, so if we have any extra time, I think we might do some of the hex mapping. I don't really have any appendix N stuff at the top of my mind to talk about in the last week. Honestly, I haven't watched much of anything in the last week. Been quite busy. I don't really have anything to necessarily recommend there. I mean, there is stuff, it's just nothing top of mind. Not the cream that rises to the top. We're just the dirty old milk on the bottom. Alright, let's see. Get this done. And done. Okay. I think we're gonna go ahead and jump into the thick of it. So not really much of a visual aid this time, is more of a just kind of a talking heads thing. So, and we're gonna get through it. Because I thought about bringing up some things that we could look at, like we're going to use a goblin encounter as an example, but the encounter is so easy that it's really not anything. We're not going to be dynamically moving a lot of pieces on the board, so that didn't really make sense to like bring up a battle map or anything like that. We're just going to kind of jump right into it. So, and I guess we can bring up the board. We'll get there. We'll get there. So, and before we dive straight in, my break is over, so back to doing the Dungeon Master thing, which is always fun. We had about 3 weeks off. I had 3 weeks off. We were off for a week back in Halloween, and then we had some people here and there missing out for different things. So the other Dungeon Master in the group ran technically a 2-shot, so we played in that, and that was fun. Nice to jump. I have a different campaign that I play in a player, so I'm not always like a lot of Dungeon Masters, we feel like you're the forever DM and you never get a chance to play. I have a different group than I play with, in which I am the player, so I don't miss out that much on that. Now, it's hard to wrangle one D&D group, much less 2 D&D groups, so I am in a very blessed position. I am aware. Thank you. But yeah, we're gonna get back into it. We just ran yesterday. The party's continuing to investigate the mysterious sickness that's affecting the Vegeman refugees that are in Bayfaro's domain, trying to figure out what is the thing that's afflicting them and kind of turning them into mad zombie-like things. Not quite the clickers from Last of Us, but you know, kind of more like a mad cow disease kind of thing. They finished their long rest in the Plainspeak Inn. They hired the Gaptooth half-brother Sammy and Samir as their boat guides, and they set off to visit the wise Halamith, the man of the mountain, hoping you can identify the Vegeman affliction for them, give them a little bit of extra things. Session went well. I knew it was going to be mostly a travel session, so there wasn't going to be too much going on. One of the things that I rolled, sometimes I do this both ways. Sometimes when I'm doing like a travel exploration thing like this, I will have them roll for the random encounters as we're going along to see what they come across. This time I was like, I'm just going to kind of get to it, kind of get them to the mountain itself. So I just rolled the random encounters beforehand while they were doing it, as well as sort of the effort, which is what I use. I track this thing called effort. We talked about this before. If you want to learn more about it, I use effort instead of measuring hours in the day or distance and as far as they can travel. It's like how much effort does it take for them to travel. It gamifies it a little bit, makes it a little random, so it's not always a 100% that they know that they can move, 6 hexes in a day or whatever it is. So it gives them a little back and forth, a little bit of planning and deciding, and once they get over that, they have to start making active Constitution saving throws. If they fail those Constitution saving throws, they start to take levels of exhaustion. So it kind of gives them this idea about like how much can you really do in a day, and how close are you to the thing you're trying to get to. It doesn't make sense to kind of push yourself beyond that edge to kind of get to where you're going, even at the chance that you might be tired once you get there, or might be not in a great shape to investigate things or get in a fight, or you're gonna have to take a long rest, and maybe you're gonna have to take an additional day of rest sitting there just to burn through those exhaustion levels. So it's just an interesting way to kind of gamify the travel a little bit, and have the choices you make and as to the routes you take and how far you go make a little bit more have a little bit more import, a little bit more of an actual choice while you're playing. They did that, and so we didn't roll any random encounters, so I take that back. We rolled technically 1 random encounter, but most of it was like going and seeing different people. They saw some, they're in the boat, so they heard some things that were going off to the north side, so they decided to take the south path. They came across some squid fishers who were dyed up to like their biceps and like just jet black from all the squid ink, and the dyers who were using it to dye things out on the sandbar and waving to each other. Just kind of do a little bit of world building and different things that they kind of come across as they travel through that. They ran across some Swagan out in the waters, and they learned a little bit about the Swagan are kind of being a little bit more aggressive. They did a combination of both words, aggressive and invasive, sort of in the area. They're building, their presence is building in the area, and they've learned that they have taken over at least one hamlet or village in the area. And so they're kind of locking that, giving them little breadcrumbs for them to lock in the back of their head, be like, hey, this might be important later in the campaign. And they're starting to build on some things. So they got to the mountain. Things went pretty well. They made some checks. They looked at some tracks. They had some tracks that they didn't quite roll well enough to discern what they would be. Some of them they did, some they didn't. What they didn't notice is the paths on the mountain, or Halamith, who has multiple camps on the mountain where he kind of moves around, so it's kind of hard to pin down. He's kind of semi-nomadic, not really semi-nomadic because he's within a few square miles of each other, but he does kind of move around on the mountain, and he has like different like camps that he kind of goes to. So they're trying to chase him down, figure out where he is so they can ask their questions. And they saw a bunch of tracks. What they did come away with is that, hey, there's been a lot of recent activity in the area. They also learned from the Haffer brothers that there's a griffin on the island. I think that's it. I don't think they learned about anything else that's on the island. Except the fire chickens, or the fire chocobos, as we sometimes call them, which are giant striders in D&D. A big reptile-looking chocobo kind of thing. So a mix of a chocobo and a big lizard that spit fire. So they did know about those. So that ties back into something, because they've already met these creatures once on a previous adventure when they moved. They portaged across this mountain area to get to the other side. They found some things. They found the twisted body of a Salaman, which is actually an older name from the older things of D&D from Forgotten Realms, I think. And I was like, oh, I like that name better than the actual name of the creatures that we use in 5e and 24.4. I was like, I'm going to steal that and use that name instead, the same way I did with Vegemin. So I'm calling them Vegapygmies Vegemin, and these guys are called Salaman. Just trying to give it a little extra flair, something a little bit different for the campaign world, rather than using the bog standard monster manual names for some of the monsters. So yeah, they came across that. They recognized that it's a sword, so I started introducing sword because I hadn't done that previously in the campaign. Swords are like halfers in my campaign world, in which gnomes and halflings are grouped into one species in the world called halfers. So it doesn't really matter. Anybody who's waist high as a halfer. Doesn't matter which specific mechanical D&D class that you're kind of playing. And the same thing is true for swords. So swords are lizard folk and troglodytes and dragonborn and basically any scaly kind of guys. Not quite bullywugs, because bullywugs are amphibians, but anybody who's reptilian, draconians would fall in that, other kinds of things. If they're big bipedal lizards, this would also probably include a lot of the Yuan-Ti, even though the Yuan-Ti are kind of weird because they're warped by magic. Would also fit in that category. So yeah, they did that. They went around, they came across the bone pit, and they're about to get into a fight with a griffin, and that's where we left off. They found the griffin roost, and that is where they're about to fight off. One of our fighter has gotten themselves stuck in a crevice in there, so they're stuck up to their waist, so they're going to technically have the prone condition at the start of the fight, and the griffin's coming down to wail on them, as the cleric's working on the cat shrine, roadside shrine, trailside shrine, trying to buff it and get it back into working order, but it's not in working order, thus not protecting against the aforementioned monster. So the monster's come down to give himself a little snacky snack, which is either going to be our artificer, our stuck fighter, those are the people who are in the bone pit right now, or an injured goat, who's also in there. Technically an injured kid, because it's a giant goat, but it's medium-sized. We also found out that maybe the druid's not super into animals, which is funny. It's a funny tack to take, characterization to take for the druid. Especially after they helped with a breech birth piglet at the beginning of the session. While they were staying at the inn. So that's interesting. That's where they are right now. It'll be interesting to see what happens with them. We are also going to potentially look at moving one of our games per month to, like I said, we've got the other person in our group who is champing at the bit to run a game. It's been a while. I took over from their DM duties, and I've been running. We just had, this was what, session 25, so it's been a minute. And they're champing at the bit. They got a new world they want to bust open and play in, and that's what we did our 2 shots. So they were looking at maybe moving one of our sessions per month, because we meet weekly, and running that. I think I've only tried this once or twice before. I do remember it's kind of difficult to keep when you're only playing the session once a month and you're playing other sessions in between in a different world. I do recall that sometimes it's hard to keep straight what happened there. You really have to take good notes, or else you'll be like, "What was that?" And you'll start to get the campaigns kind of mixed up. But their campaign, I think, is going to be quite different than mine, so hopefully that shouldn't be too big of an issue. But that's enough preamble. Let's get into the thing. Let's get into the thing. So, we're going to remove solutions and create obstacles. That's the core principle of encounter design in D&D that I want to talk about. I've talked about it a little bit before on the channel, but I wanted to kind of broaden the topic and talk a little bit more about it in detail. So you want to create better encounters by removing solutions. So let me start with kind of a very simple example of kind of what we're going to be talking about. In this, let's discuss a goblin guard post. So your standard goblin hideout, you got caves, a bunch of goblins are in there, causing a ruckus for the local community. Very bog standard D&D kind of stuff. This thing, let's imagine that the party crawls through the tall grass towards the cave, and as they're at the edge, they can see that there's a clearing and there's a cave mouth. And outside of that cave mouth, there is goblin guard on each side of the cave mouth, and a nearby warg that's sleeping with chained to a spike that's driven into the ground. Looks like a cut and dry combat encounter, right? Party rushes in, they're going to defeat the guards, and they're going to move into the hideout. Now, you get bonus points if you're like, well, one of the things the guards might do is try to raise the alarm rather than fight back, or run away to get reinforcements. You're already one step ahead of us a little bit. But yeah, that's good instincts. Be like, they're not just going to stand there and die. They're going to try to run. Whether they're going to flee, they could try to surrender. Or we start using things like morale. When you start getting into that moving from that very, very basic neophyte level of being a dungeon master where you're just like, okay, guys on map, guys attack, guys die. And you start moving into, okay, now what makes more sense for them to do in combat? Oh, they're going to fight. They're going to try to get reinforcements. What is their job here? Their job is to keep people out. If they can't keep people out, they're supposed to alert people of the intruders. Okay, that makes more sense. Now you're like, okay, they're going to run for reinforcements. They're going to raise an alarm. They're going to, you know, if they get close to death, most things don't like to die. So they might just flee off into the wilderness, back into the tall grass, and run away. The thing is that what I want to focus in specifically is the cut and dry combat encounter aspect. Is that we frame this as a problem instead of an obstacle. So what exactly do I mean by that? So one of the things when you have something like this and you're like, okay, here's a combat encounter. You've created a problem. You create a combat encounter. You're assuming a combat solution to that encounter. Instead of thinking about this encounter as an obstacle that needs to be bypassed, which is a slightly different change of perspective. So with an obstacle, we're talking about, oh, this is just something that needs to be bypassed. And this is why I've shifted some of my own Dungeon Master language, where I try not to prep as many combat encounter or social RP encounters anymore. I try to think about things as either, okay, this is a creature encounter or this is an environment encounter. It just depends, like, are there creatures in it? Because that gives us options to do multiple things. Are there not creatures in it? Because that really kind of narrows down the specifics about what we're going to do in that scene, about how we're going to bypass things. So let's take our original example and we're going to reframe it. So we had our problem. It's like, you must neutralize the guards to get inside. That is essentially our problem and our solution. So if we wanted to make it an obstacle, you go, okay, we need to enter the hideout. And the guards are in the way. Now, one of the things that's helpful with that is that you can still have a solution. And it's actually a pretty good Dungeon Master practice, is to think of one specific way the player characters could succeed. So you think about this. This is sort of this is your Deus Ex option. This is the gentle nudge you can give the players. You can push them in the right direction if they get stuck with something. It's your, not necessarily a pressure release valve, but it gives you an option if they get stymied for any reason. Because one of the worst things that can happen for your pacing in your game is if your group starts to have a conversation they can't agree on what to do, or they don't know what to do. Which means they've missed maybe some critical information that you've given them that they're missing, or they're just, this happens a lot with things like puzzles, which is one of the reasons why I don't often run puzzles, is that sometimes they're just like something that seems really easy to you from the Dungeon Master who has the context of the entire adventure versus the players who don't have that context. Those things that seem just absolutely elementary to you, they're going to completely miss. It's going to go whoosh right over their head. So you kind of want to avoid that. So, but having a Deus Ex sort of back pocket solution that you can pull out and be like, hey, this is a way to achieve what you're trying to do, but it's not, most importantly, the only way to get through there. And it might not even be the best way to get through there. So when you start to frame those encounters as obstacles, as something that's, you have your obstacle here, and instead of having to drive right through it, you can go over it, you can go around it, you can go under it, you can, in this Deus Ex example I'm going to say, you can actually just try to physically move the object and you can move through it. So if I was doing this encounter and it's like, all right, there are going to be guards outside, they've got the warg that's chained up, how would I create my own personal Deus Ex for them? So one thing that I might choose to do is be like, you guys throw me a perception check. You notice that the spike that's holding the warg's chain looks loose. If you distracted the warg with some sort of prey, maybe like a rabbit, perhaps, something that you could do, you could pull out a familiar, a vermin spell, or the hat of vermin, some sort of wild shape, anything like that. Anything, maybe I'd give you an animal handling if you wanted to, or performance if you wanted to pretend to make the sounds of an animal or something like that. That's clear prey, something that might sound like it's a herd animal or something like that that might draw the warg's predatory attention to it. You get the idea that that warg might bolt into the grass and might, because its spike is loose, it's going to pull its spike free and it's going to run off into the tall grass. Dragging the guards after it as they chase it down to grab the warg and bring it back. That's just one possible way that characters might actually be able to get through the entrance. Now, there's lots of other ways they might do it. As we said before, they might just run up and start attacking. That's perfectly viable. They're in the tall grass, so they're going to get some stealth advantage. Probably going to get like a surprise round. Get surprise on them, able to drop in there. You might have somebody who can disguise themselves as a goblin, try to fast talk their way through it. Characters, the group might just walk up and start talking to them. There's nothing that says that you can't talk to monsters. Now, some monsters are friendlier than others. Some are unfriendlier than others. Some are outright hostile. And this is a very old school thing where you have the 2d6 reaction table and you roll on that to figure out their starting behavior as to how they regard the player characters, with 7 of the 2d6, the right middle being just kind of neutral, being like, oh, somebody's walking up to talk to you and you go, hey, what's going on? They might be more friendly, but you could walk up to negotiate for an audience with the goblin's leader. Now you're going to have something that's going to help you do that other than just talking. You're going to have some reason to see their leader, say. You could also just trick the guards into something. You could do the classic, throw the stone, go in, and do some other way to trick them around. And one of the things that I thought about is like you could have people sneak up on the rocks above them and drop some big rocks on their head. Why not? So the idea is that there's a high chance that the players are going to do something you didn't anticipate. And you can anticipate that because that's one of the strengths of Dungeons and Dragons, is that a lot of things, there are infinite possibilities of how to approach the same situation. And it's going to determine wildly on your player group, on the player characters they're playing as to their strengths and their abilities. So it's hard to be like, oh, this is going to be a combat encounter. And I think that can be a big trap, especially for newer dungeon masters. Like, I have planned out a combat encounter, not realizing that, oh, well, the players can always try to sneak past it or do something else. They can turn invisible and one of them's going to walk past, or cast sleep and put them to sleep, and then we don't have to do the encounter, and all sorts of things. Or like I said, you know, get them to run off chasing something else. There's lots of ways you could do it. Now, let's say I was in that situation and they're stuck in the tall grass and they can't seem to agree about what to do. Incredibly common in a D&D group. Incredibly common. Happens all the time. So you might go, all right, I think I'm going to give them the idea. I'm going to give them my little Deus Ex. And I'd be like, okay, everybody make a perception check. Now, the important thing is that I don't set a DC for the perception check. Because if you set the DC, that means that everybody could potentially fail it. And that's one of those things where you create something that becomes a dead end because nobody passes the check. Or it doesn't feel good because then you have to give them the information anyways after you set a DC. Instead of setting the DC, you're just like, whoever rolls the highest is going to get the hint. Doesn't matter if the highest roll is 6 or 26. You're just like, okay, you roll the highest, so you're the person who picks up on this. And once you start doing that with your dungeon mastering, it doesn't feel weird for the players. Like, and you can just say, you can be like, all right, I just want to see who is the first person who notices this. Everybody give me a perception check. You can just say that and they'll be like, okay, I rolled a 9. That's technically the highest. All right, well, this is not difficult to notice. You're just the first person who does notice it. As you guys are having this quiet conversation in the tall grass, you notice that it looks like the stake is that spike is a little bit loose in the ground. So if you can get the warg to apply some energy against it, pull against it, it's probably going to come free. You give them the hint. It's just the idea that nobody fails this idea. Now, let's talk a little bit about leveling that up a little bit. As we said, there's no two parties that handle a situation the same way, which is why we don't want to prep a solution. if we prep a solution, even if we prep the solution for the specific players and the specific group that we have, there's always a chance that they're not going to do the things that they usually do. That's where you don't try to anticipate what the players are going to do or the characters are going to do. Give options, be like, if they do this, this could happen. And if they don't, they get to avoid it. And that's a cool thing where they can be like, either they avoided it, and then you can show them that they avoided it, or sometimes they just don't know. This is really good, like in this example, let's say that they decided to, they did the thing, they used the Deus Ex thing, and the druid turned into a rabbit, baited the warg ran off after him, he circles back and gets back with the party, everybody else sneaks their little way into the cave. Now, they have bypassed that encounter. The problem is, those guys are still at the entrance of the cave, which means on their way out, they're going to have to deal with them still. So now you get basically 2 encounters for the price of 1, which is great. Unless they're doing something really quick. If they're just in and out really quickly, those guards might not be back yet. So as you grow as a DM, and you know that the 2 parties don't handle the situation the same way, and you realize that that's the magic of TTRPGs, like I said. The infinite possibilities, that's why we have to have a human to run the game. Why we're still a long ways, I think, off from AI technically running that, because AI doesn't, because of how it is, doesn't have imagination. But if we reframe those encounters as obstacles, we dramatically increase the depth of your game. Players can use any of the 3 pillars or combinations to kind of succeed on any of these encounters. Might be one of the things, like we said, there could be the thing where they use a spell and they disguise themselves and then they go up and talk to them, or any sort of situations like that. They draw them out and then maybe have a combat not in front of there, maybe draw them out into the tall grass and have their combat in the tall grass where they have more of an advantage over the shorter creatures, maybe. You could say something like that. So lots of different ways that you can kind of use combinations of things to make things more interesting. Instead of being like, oh, well, this combat has to happen here and it has to happen at the cave mouth and it has to be a combat. So once you start, it's almost taking something that's concrete and making it more like jelly. We want it to be flexible and movable and have that sort of fluidity to fill the vessel as it needs to be, instead of only having something that's a concrete shape that can only be dealt with in a few different ways. If it has that more fluid dynamics, it can move around and kind of fill whatever role we need it to do. It will always kind of find its spot, lowest center of gravity. And once you start doing that and you kind of think about doing that as a dungeon master, you realize that the path forward as far as running games kind of reveals itself to you. You're like, oh, I don't actually have to plan steps A through E. Like, okay, they do step A, and then they do step B, and then they do step C and D, and then they'll get to E, having done all those things. So they'll definitely have this information. They'll have these items, etc., etc. They're just being like, nope. Here are 5 things that are sitting in your path, or 4 things that are sitting in your obstacles that are sitting in your prospective path to get there, get to E. So they might decide to completely go around and circumvent A. They might, at encounter B, maybe they get the goblins to turn traitor onto their side. Great. And so in C, they have the fight, and maybe they get double-crossed because of their morale. Maybe they go back to the other side, so now they're kind of doing a double encounter, so things are worse for them. And maybe they help them kill them. Maybe they send the goblins off. You know, all sorts of weird stuff could happen. But as soon as you allow it to be like, these are just obstacles, and however you deal with it is however you deal with it. And whatever outcome that is has this ripple effect throughout the game. And you just be like, okay, let's say that we had this original encounter. And they did a bog standard combat, they killed the warg, and they killed one of the goblins, but one of the goblins fled off into the tall grass. You might be like, is that guy going to stay out there forever? Are there any goblin patrols that are out there that he can go grab and bring back? He might show back up later with reinforcements. He might run away forever. Maybe that's a goblin that your player characters come back across once they come out of the goblin cave. Maybe the next day or something, or in camp, they see this thing sneaking around, skulking around their camp. And they might have a conversation with it. It might steal stuff from them. And maybe they decide to kill it. You never know with players. They might decide, oh, lone goblin survivor, can't have that. Shoot it with an arrow and a couple fire bolts and it's dead. So, but once you allow that, you kind of release the reins a little bit, hold onto it very loosely, and let the, in this case, in this metaphor, the horse kind of guide itself, and the horse being your group. And like they kind of pick the way, and you only make sure that they stay relatively on the path of the direction you're trying to go. And once you do that, and they're actually finding the path to get there. And then the game becomes, it becomes incredibly less intensive to prep. You're like, oh, I just prep things, and I don't really assume that they're either going to pass it or not pass it. I just like, okay, this is the thing, and if they pass it, that's great. They move forward, however they get through it. I don't care if they have a combat, I don't care if they talk to the creatures, I don't care if they sneak around the creatures. They have a goal. Specifically, their goal is to do something in this cave. We don't know what that is. I didn't come up with a whole adventure after this initial encounter. But let's say I don't want to do hostages because that's super easy. They've stolen some magic item from a nearby village, I guess. Some low-level. Maybe it's the magic sword that sits above the hearth in the inn or something like that. That they didn't attack on the village, and the bugbear, whoever's in charge of these goblins, the hobgoblin, recognized that was a pretty nice looking thing, grabbed that special sword and ran off with it, and now they want it back. Maybe it's put some sort of spell on it, like it has sanctuary or something like that, something that's protective for them, so they have a practical need for it. Maybe or not. It's up to you. They might just want it because it's their grandpappy sword or whatever. And so you can do things like that. So now they have a goal in it, and once that goal is go there and get a thing, now the combats and now the things are just obstacles. You don't need to kill these people. You just need to get past them. You know what you're trying to do. Those things are just things that are in your way. You don't have to kill them. You don't have to talk to them. You can try to sneak around them. You can try to trade them for the sword. You can do all sorts of other stuff. Once they have a very specific goal, and that goal is not just kill everything that's in this cave, your game will change a lot. It will, like I said, that path just kind of unfolds to you, and you're like, okay, there are these sorts of goblins. They're here. Here's some random encounters they might run into along the way. There's some guard patrols that kind of come in and out, so there's a few more goblins that might show up inside the dungeon or outside the dungeon. And I know where the sword is. I know where the guy who has the sword is. Maybe he's walking around. Maybe he's using it. Maybe he doesn't know the power of the sword yet. Maybe that can be one of their trade negotiations. It's like, oh, it's just a nice sword. He doesn't know that it's a magical sword. Anything like that. So once you do that, the game just kind of, in my experience, the game just kind of runs itself. You just go, okay, I know what the setting is. I know the area. I know what people are doing in it, kind of what they want, what their jobs are. And then the player characters burst onto the scene and start mucking it up. And once you're okay with them just mucking it up and doing whatever they want, and the world just kind of reacting to them, the game becomes a very, very quick and easy reactive cycle of being like, here's the things as they are. You get right into that D&D cycle of narration for a Dungeon Master. Here's the situation as it is. What would you like to do? Player characters make a decision or take a course of action. Great. We roll some dice. This is how the world reacts to that. This is the new normal. What do you do now? This is how things have changed. What are you going to do next? And then you're off to the races. That's basically a self-propelling machine, where basically you are waiting for the players to put their input. You react to their input and spit back out the change. After you guys roll some dice, usually. Not always. Sometimes they make a decision and you're like, well, that's just what happens. Or, that doesn't work. That's not how that works, unfortunately. Just as long as the way that you're describing is not like, oh, I miscommunicated something to you, and that's the reason why you guys chose something that didn't make sense. I did that actually in our last session, where I had the player who's like, I want to fill up some flasks at the inn with some cheap whiskey and buy some rags. And I'm like, oh, okay, he's making Molotov cocktails. Like, so I have flasks. I was like, oh, because my understanding, though, you know, as I thought about it later, it's like they do call it an oil flask. I was thinking oil skin, like a water skin. And so every time that I see flask, and considering its price in D&D, I always assume it's like a tin or iron flask. I was like, oh, well, you can't really use a Molotov with a tin flask. You're going to need a bottle. The whole point is that the thing has to break when you throw it. That's how the Molotovs work. And once I realized that's what they were doing afterwards, I was like, oh, we're just going to take a step back and retroactively. This is the cost of the bottles. Do you want to buy bottles for that so this actually works? Yes. Player character buys the bottles. Great. Resolve that. Moving on. So it's okay to just kind of take a step back and be like, oh, I didn't understand what you were trying to do, or I miscommunicated something. Let's fix that really quickly and move forward, so that way you don't get to ensure that you get to use your cool idea later. And that's how we do that. All right. Before we go on, I did want to take a brief break and be like, hey, man, talking's real hard. Congratulations to us all, the channel, and thank you specifically to you guys. We actually did hit 500 subscribers, which is a big milestone. It's small. It's dropping the bucket in the grand scheme of YouTube and online. I don't know not even reputation, footprint, I guess, of knowledge about the channel and things that I do. But hey, it means a lot to me. So thanks for being part of that. Now, I also, as part of this, kind of started streaming a little bit more on Twitch again, doing some non-D&D content. So if you want to see that, you can go follow the Twitch channel. And I also set up a second YouTube channel, just because of the way that YouTube works. They really want you to focus per channel in specifically on a specific type of content. That just seems to be the best way it works based off of the audience. So I set up a second channel called Fiendish Sundries. You can see the ad down in the description for that. If you want to subscribe over there, I'm going to just that's going to be kind of the second channel where it's just going to be kind of like the potpourri, the sundries, the miscellany. We're just throwing all the other stuff over there. So I'm going to put the VODs from the Twitch streams over there. So if you're not a Twitch person, you can go watch them over there. If you are a Twitch person, you can just check me out on Twitch where I do that. So in this time, we've been streaming the very beginning of Vampire the Masquerade Shadows of New York, which is a visual novel in the Powered by the Apocalypse. That is not correct. White Wolf's World of Darkness. There we go. WOD. World of Darkness setting. So if you want to see that, modern day, Gothic people, Gothic horror, I guess, modern Gothic horror in New York City, you can go check that out. It's been interesting. It's fun to kind of jump back into Vampire the Masquerade because I haven't played it in a minute. So trying to remember the different clans and everything that goes around with it. There's a lot of proper nouns. There's a lot of lingo in the game. A lot of that. So trying to remember some of that. Good thing there's a glossary in the game. Let's say that. So try to remember all that stuff. We play Julia, a newly turned vampire of the La Sombra clan, who is not well liked by vampire society in New York City. And we start off there. Let's see. I felt like there was something else I wanted to talk about before we jump into the rest of it. Oh, so I've been thinking about putting my Dungeon Master notes for the campaign I've been running and the like session recaps up on either Patreon or Coffee. That's ko-fi.com. I know that's something that people have asked me about here and there. So if that's something you'd like to see, let me know. Just go ahead and drop that down in the comments so I know about it. That's always helpful. Know about that stuff. Trying to figure out what people are interested in. Because I do want to try to create stuff for Patreon and move stuff. Sorry. I do want to try to create some stuff for Patreon and Coffee, just for people who are interested in doing that and supporting the channel. So it's not always feels like, oh, I mean, I'm happy to take a few bucks here or there, but feel like you're getting some value out of it. So if that's something you guys are interested in, let me know. I'll drop it in there and see if there's other stuff. Try to think about tiers, maybe making monsters or some dungeons or something like that, and you can throw in there maybe once a month, and you guys pick up that stuff, maybe some sort of homebrew rules and stuff like that. And maybe some of the other stuff, because I have a lot of the hex crawling stuff that people have asked about a lot about, and might put it there, and then might put it for free there, and then honestly I'd probably just need to put it on DriveThruRPG for people who are interested in those resources. I just got to get the time to sit down and format it all so other people can read it other than just me. Because I feel like way too much shorthand for most people to understand what the heck I'm talking about. Unless you're like me and I've been dealing with this stuff for many, many years, and I know exactly what I'm talking about implicitly. But you wouldn't know that. So it might not be as helpful for you unless I really clean it up. But let's jump back into creating our obstacles instead of problems. So removing that solution-oriented aspect of the D&D game. Let's jump back a little bit to our goblin example. So, if you've watched the channel before, you know I'm a big fan of the ICRPG, that's Index Card RPG style of room DCs. The idea is that per encounter or per room or area or locale, you essentially set one DC for that area. You guys want to make athletics checks in it? It's a 14. You guys want to make investigation checks? It's a 14. You need to save against something in the room, like a pit trap? Guess what the DC is? It's a 14. Now you modify those as easy or hard by usually adding a +3 or dropping it by 3. And so I like to do that, and I wanted to talk to us a little bit about how we can add that into our encounter design implicitly. So, as we know, there are basically the 3 pillars of gameplay. We have our combat, we have our exploration or investigation, and we have our social or RP, our talkie talks. So, if we were thinking about that original goblin encounter, we've got our 2 guards, we've got our warg, and we talked about, oh, well, there are innumerable ways the player characters might decide that they want to approach this. So sometimes it's helpful for us to consider which of those approaches might be, as we think about it as a Dungeon Master, what might be easier or harder to do. So I'm thinking, alright, DC is 14 for this Goblin Guard encounter. Now I think that goblins are pretty low level creatures. The warg's the really only tough thing. We didn't discuss what type of party this is or what level they are, but I was assuming not level 1. So 2 goblins and a warg should not be a particularly difficult encounter for them. So if that's the thing, I think that combat's probably the easiest way to do that. And we'll talk a little bit more about why that is. So I'm going to say, I'm going to drop that by 3 to 11. So if they were trying to do combat things, they wanted to throw saves at them, or they're trying to do some off-the-wall thing in combat, I'd be like, most of that stuff's going to be DC 11. If they want to, maybe they run by and try to hammer the spike deeper into the ground because they know it's loose, be like, cool, give me an athletics DC 11 check to do that, or a strength check DC 11, whatever it is. Yes, you can use your smith's tools that has a hammer in it. I'll let you use that proficiency. Why not? You know how to swing a hammer. So again, once I'm flexible with stuff, I can be like, yes, of course, you could do that. Anything that would let you smack that down, like you probably wouldn't be able to use Mage Hand because Mage Hand has very specific amount of force it can exert on an object, which is not very much. So I don't think I'd let them do that. But most other things I'd let you do. Now, I think sort of the middle of the road when I think about this, I think the medium difficult or moderate difficulty that DC 14 would be the role-playing or social aspect. I think that the easiest way, or the middle of the road way to do this, is that to walk up and just talk to the people. If you have something that makes sense that the goblins and their bugbear or hobgoblin leader, whoever their leader is, might be interested in talking to you about, I think it's pretty reasonable that you'll be able to get that audience. Now again, you're a bunch of heavily armed and armored adventurer psychopaths, so group of murder hobos. So are they going to let you into their home? Maybe or maybe not. You might have to do some canoodling. You're going to have to roll some good things, or they might decide, oh, we'll have the conversation out here. You don't get to come inside, and where things go sour, and then you turn around and start killing everybody inside our home. And be like, no, you're going to be out here. My guards are going to watch you. We're going to have the discussion out here. But I think that's a very moderate difficulty. The DC 14 should be straightforward. I don't think that's going to be too difficult, assuming that they have somebody in the party who has some sort of charisma and is probably a persuasion skill proficiency. Your sorcerers, your warlocks, your bards, etc. Probably not a difficult DC. Probably going to make that do. Now what happens if they don't make it? Well, now I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll talk about that in a second. Now the last one that I think would be the most difficult thing to do would be to do the exploration approach, to try to, I think, sneak past them. You have active guards, you have the warg that has keen senses. The ability for you to sneak past that is going to be very difficult. They are active, and now if I wanted to change that and I wanted to make it easier, maybe I'm like, I want that to be easier. Maybe I want the social RP to be the hardest. Okay, we can change about what they know about goblins and how aggressive they are in the area, and be like, oh, well, the guards aren't fully on watch. Let's say that our group, maybe they futzed around a little bit in the overworld. Maybe they're running a little bit late. So actually they're coming up on this goblin cave maybe at nighttime. So maybe these guys are actually kind of sleepy. Maybe one of them is just fully asleep. And if that's the case, one or both of them are fully asleep, I might take that exploration and stealth and be like, okay, this is actually goes from being the hardest way to get in, and now probably being the easiest way to get in. You really just need to sneak past these guys while they're asleep. And so now I might swap that and be like, okay, that's the DC 11 then. I might change that DC for that. And I was saying that there's an easy, a middle, and a hard, but they don't always have to be each of those aligned. If everybody's asleep, all of those checks are going to be easy. Except for I guess the social thing. The social thing might be hard. If somebody wakes you up when you're on guard, some people you don't know, and immediately start asking to see your leader in the middle of the night, it might be harder to overcome that. So that I might set that at the DC 17. But if you're going to have combat's going to be relatively easy. They're unprepared for you. DC 11. You want to sneak past them, easy to do. DC 11. So it doesn't always have to be that. We just have that nice baseline from that IC RPG style where we're like, okay, everything is generally at a 14. And if the things seem easy, we knock it down by 3. If it seems kind of difficult, like it should be more difficult, we'll knock it up by 3. So we've got our 3 things. We've got our 3 ideas. So let's jump back and be like, okay, we had that social RP thing. They jumped up. You woke them up in the middle of the night. Things did not go well because that DC 17, maybe you rolled only a 15. And you're like, okay. Now we have to consider sort of the pros and cons of each approach. Well, I mean, I guess we did kind of already cover that. And so, yeah, I was going to talk a little bit more about the exiting of that scene or the transition period, but let's go ahead and just talk about the pros and cons of those real fast. So combat, pros of combat for the players. They have surprise from the tall grass. It's very easy to attack from there. If they have any ranged attacks, they might be able to do that. The cons of that approach, likelihood that they're going to raise the alarm. And that's going to make things more difficult for you if you're trying to sneak in there. Again, if you're only trying to get the magic sword, what you don't want to have to do is fight every single goblin and hobgoblin and bugbear that are in there and every warg either. You just want the thing with the least expenditure of resources you can get in the quickest means possible. Now, if you did the social approach, maybe you just walked up and started talking to them. That works pretty well. You can do like a bribe, just bribe them. You can have some trade goods that you want to trade with. You might, again, do the disguise self as and do a deception. Be like, I'm a returning scout with information from the nearby village about how things are going and maybe what we should target for our next attack. Get that stuff in there. So there's a lot of pros for the social side as well. You could also try intimidation. Right? They're just goblins. Now, you've got a party that's going to outnumber them. You're bigger than them. there's a chance that you could just intimidate them to let you in. Might work, might not. They know that they're probably going to get raked over the coals if they let people in. So you're up against a hard ledge to try to push them for that. But it is possible. But I might make that the hard check. I'd be like, it feels like a DC 17. Because they're kind of screwed either way. Either you're going to beat them or the bugbear's going to beat them. So it's kind of, I'm just choosing who beats me, essentially. Now the fail state for something like a social is like, you might get turned away by them. Or if you're too pushy, you might move into combat. They might draw blades on you. If you're really, really pushy about getting inside and you really... when we talk about the escalation of violence, I have an older blog post over on the website, reddragonfiend.com, where we talk about the escalation of violence, where things go from words to often pushing, and then to blows, and then often to weapons. So there is a ramped escalation of how things are dealt with in conflict. So it's not like, oh, people just immediately pull blades and stuff. Like if you talk to the goblins, they're gonna, they're gonna make some crude gestures with their hands, and they're gonna tell you to, kick rocks, get out of here. We're done with you. And if you keep pushing on them, then they start to escalate the violence. Now, if you decide to sneak past, the pros for that is a quiet infiltration, like we talked about. Nobody's going to know you're there. That makes it easy to get around. Less likely that you're going to have to get into a fight with things. Which means you can be faster. And it means that if you do get into a fight, you're going to have more resources available to you. You're going to have more spell slots. You're going to have more abilities with you because you didn't waste them fighting those guys out front. Now, the cons, as we kind of talked about, is that you got active guards. They are actively guarding at this point, and your warg has keen senses. So, kind of difficult. Other ideas, like we talked about, you could drop rocks from above. Now, there's always a risk that you sneak in, but then the guards still block your escape. So you're going to have to deal with the same encounter twice, potentially. And then, of course, we have our Deus Ex thing, the warg distraction, which essentially works by moving the obstacle rather than moving around it. Rather than us taking action, we're forcing the obstacle itself to remove itself from the equation by doing that, which is great use. If you can get away from out of an entire combat by using like the hat of vermin or one wild shape into a rabbit, that's a pretty good use of resources to get through an encounter. Now, not all groups play tactically like that. That is very much a me as a type of player kind of thing, which makes me, that very much shows my OSR kind of tendencies of leaning sometimes. Where I'm like, oh, how do I get the biggest bang for my buck, essentially? How do I get the most progress with the least expenditure of resources? Because I've talked about this multiple times before, but at the end of the day, D&D is a resource management game. A lot of people like to talk about how it's a collaborative narrative storytelling game. Yes, but there are games that specifically do that. D&D is at itself, by having limited resources, a resource management game. You have so many things you can do before you take a short rest, so many things you do before you can take a long rest. And that scales with your power. So it is a resource management game. Even if we sometimes like to tell ourselves that it's other things. Which it can be. But at the end of the day, it is still a resource management game. But the important thing to do is when we're thinking about, alright, that's the scene. Where I think that obstacle mindset really, really shines is the exiting of scenes, the transition of scenes. So we go back to baseline. Group rushes the guards, they decide that they're going to have this combat. What's going to happen? What's going to truly be the outcome of this encounter if they decide to just do a bog standard combat encounter? They are probably going to win, which means they're either going to kill the goblins and the warg or they're going to drive them off. They're going to lose, which means they're either going to flee or get captured. I mean, they could be killed, but one of the things that's really, really helpful for you in your game is that you could throw tough encounters at them. Just be like, the monsters, especially thoughtful monsters like goblins, they're going to want to actually take you alive. They're actually not going to want to kill you. because they're going to want to take your stuff and they're going to want to try to hold you hostage, ransom you back. That way they can get money, because your dead body is just a thing they got to take care of. Your alive body can be worth a lot of money to them. Very common tactic in combat throughout the ages. It'd be like, we're going to ransom this person back, we're going to capture them and ransom them back. So that way we can make money off of them. And they can win, but the alarm gets raised. So when people runs back in, so technically you could lose and the alarm is raised too. But if you've been neutralized, they're probably not going to raise the alarm. Unless you ran away. If you surrendered, they won't. Or got knocked out or whatever. So you could win, but the alarm is raised, which means that combat's going to become more difficult. So as you start to think about that, each result should flow very naturally with these obstacles into the next scene. You go, okay, they won. What happens next? Okay, they lost the fight. They got captured. What happens next? Oh, they lost the fight, but they ran away. What happens next? Okay, they won, but the alarm was raised. What happens next? Or they lost and the alarm was raised. What happens next? So, with a lot of Dungeon Masters, myself included, we kind of default to combat's over and they loot the bodies, and that's the only way the combats tend to end. But there's a lot of different ways the combats could end. So I thought of, okay, here's some examples. Looting the bodies, we'll just put that up there too. So that's one. Hiding the bodies. Hey, we know that this is a hostile area. People are moving in and out of the area. We can say that they have picked up tracks of the goblins, trolls in the area. Maybe they've seen one. Maybe they've already fought one. Like, hey, maybe we should hide these bodies so people don't know that they're intruders. You might decide to investigate the area, looking for stuff. You might decide to explore, immediately start exploring deeper into cave. You might need to chase down routed enemies. If you have, like we said, one of those goblins that books it into the tall grass, you might decide that you need to chase that person down and take care of them before they go and find a patrol, and you get in a sort of pincher maneuver where you have goblins at your back and goblins at your front, and you're gonna end up doing 2 combat encounters probably at once, which is gonna be a real bad time for you. There's other things that might be, you might need to flee. We talked about combat not going your way. You might flee. Either other side might surrender. You might kill the warg, and maybe the 2 goblins are like, yeah, you can throw down their spears or whatever they're using, and they're like, we surrender. We're not trying to die. And now now your player characters have to deal with that. You guys might fight to kind of like a stalemate, and maybe it becomes more of a negotiation. Maybe they grab somebody and they knock somebody out. When player characters out, and they put a dagger to their throat and be like, hey, stop combat right now. This is our hostage. If you want this guy back, you gotta leave all your stuff and get out of here. Or, you might have the combat end with more reinforcements arriving, and now the player characters have to be like, ooh, now it's kind of a double combat. Do we keep fighting? Do we try to run away? Do we try to find out some way from the reinforcements from not arriving? Do we do, it could be a number of different ways, things that they do. So, when you start thinking about these different ways the combat can end in this, and we're only going to talk about combat because there are as many ways that a scene can end as they can begin or can be done in that scene. Right? We're talking infinite possibilities. So it could be a lot of things. So instead, let's focus on just the combat aspect for right now. So with each exit, we're not creating that solution for it. We're just creating a new obstacle. Think about this. Okay. So I'm going to look at my list right here of the different things I said are just things that could happen. Ways they could end. So we started off with looting the bodies. All right. What is a new obstacle for looting the bodies? Well, looting the bodies takes time. You're standing over a bunch of dead monsters. The chance that more monsters come across you is always a chance. This is where we do things like those random encounter rolls. That's why they're so useful, is they become this timed aspect. Be like, hey, if you guys just fart around as a group, in the middle of essentially an active combat area, there's a chance that you might run into more combat. So you can't spend too much time doing stuff. That's one. Same thing with hiding the bodies. That could be something that comes up. Where they're like, we gotta go throw these things in the high grass, so that way to stop people from recognizing that we're here. So if you loot the bodies and then just leave, people can still find those dead bodies, and once they find those dead bodies, they're gonna raise the alarm. Now, more obstacles that come from, oh, we're going to investigate the area. Same thing. Anytime that you take time, that you're not sort of progressing appropriately forward towards your goal, this is how I run random encounters in general, is that, hey, you've had an encounter here, you're deciding not to move forward, you know that the sword is not here. Why would it be at the cave's mouth? It's going to be deeper in there. You're pretty sure that the leader has it, based off of what you learned from the village. So spending more time here is not progressing you towards your goal. That's when I start rolling random encounter checks. Be like, okay, you guys are, again, kind of fighting around in this area. There's a chance that more monsters are going to run across you. You'll have to do that. Exploring deeper. What are the challenges for exploring deeper? Okay, what else is in this cave system? This is where we have our HOTS. We have our hazards, our obstacles, our tricks, our traps. What are exploratory things that they might run across that they need to deal with? There could be the classic pitfall trap, poison darts. There could be bad footing. Maybe there's a chasm they need to get across. It's got a rickety rope bridge or something like that that's really only meant to hold like small goblin creatures. How do you get across that? Got a bunch of medium creatures, probably one or more who has medium or heavy armor on that might not hold their weight. Okay, that's a cool obstacle. We'll throw that in there. Why not? Yeah. Okay, we routed the enemies. Are we going to chase them down? Because then that becomes an exploration chase scene. We need to chase these guys down because they're going to raise the alarm if we don't take care of them. But if you're fleeing, well, that's just the inverse of a chase scene. Flight scenes and chase scenes are just the same thing. It's just depending on who's running. So if you guys are getting your butts kicked, you might turn around and start running. If you do, those goblins might give chase to you. Now, in this aspect, they probably wouldn't. Because you've already got a power play on them. You've got more bodies than they do. So the likelihood that they're going to chase you into tall grass where they don't have sight lines and stuff, probably not likely. I might give them a wisdom check to be like, does this seem like a good idea to them? I'd probably give them advantage on it because I don't think that they would think that was the chance. Or I'd lower the DC. Like I said, that room DC was 14. I might lower it to 11 and be like, okay, they need to make a wisdom saving throw versus 11. If they pass it, they're not going to pursue you because they need to keep their active guard station. If they fail, they're going after you. And I'd probably make it for all of them to see who's going to go after you. And based off of what we know about the dog that it might chase the prey, you know, the warg might make it a disadvantage. It might be like, they're likely to run after you if they see you. That's their predatory instinct. If you're running away from them, they're going to chase you. Now, what happens if they surrender? What happens if you get into the scrap and the player characters have to surrender? Okay, you get captured, you get taken into the cave system. You're going to see the whole cave system probably as they take you to see the leader. You're going to see where the sword is, but they're also going to take your stuff and probably throw you in a pen somewhere as they try to interrogate you about, like, who are you? Why are you here? Who sent you? Who do we go to ransom you? We're going to go back to the village. We're going to send runners back to the village to do that. And then you guys have your little bit of downtime where you're in this pen or whatever that you can try to break out and grab your gear and get back into the fight. Or whatever it is. Or maybe you get pulled out one by one and do stuff with you. Maybe they do something where they're like, oh, we're going to use you for sport. And they're going to do something where they're going to take two of you out of the pen and throw you into a pit and throw a sword in between you and be like, hey, you guys are going to fight for our amusement. Something like that. So then you got half your party who's already out of the pens. They have access to a weapon. They can turn it on these goblins, but the odds are not in their favor if they decide to do that. So what are you going to do? There's your challenge. I don't know how you're going to get through it. That's up for you to decide, my man. That is your job as the players. I'm just telling you, what are the guys working on in the pen while these two are fighting? Are they like trying to jimmy the locks? They're trying to find a way out. They're trying to loosen. I mean, it's a pen in a cave. It's probably just a wooden cage. They're trying to like cut through the bindings on one of the dowels that's basically makes up one of these bars. They're just cutting the lashings with whatever they have, like loosen it enough that they can kind of squeeze out and get out, and then get their friends and get out of there and find their gear, or run back to town and tell everything that's happened, maybe try to resupply with the town stuff, and then have to come back and get their gear. I don't know how the adventure is going to go, and I don't have to. That's the thing, is when I change the encounters to not being like, oh, you didn't do the thing that I thought you were going to do, it'd be like, I don't know what you're going to do. What I'm going to tell you is these things are in your way. They are obstacles to what you need to do. However you deal with those obstacles is up to you. And depending on how you interact with the obstacles, they create new obstacles as you move through them to something else. And so it becomes a very, like I said, the path was laid out before you. It becomes a very natural path that you just navigate. You're like, okay, you do this thing. I think in response, if they know this, they would do this thing. Now I tell you what has changed and how we move forward from that. Now, we go into negotiation. That's one of the things that we talked about, is that just as I said that they might knock out one of the player characters and put a dagger to your throat, there's no reason that you can't take one of the goblins and grab them and put them in a grapple and put a dagger to their throat and be like, I'm going to kill this guy, unless you take us to see your leader. Now, they're goblins, so if we play them archetypal goblins, they don't really care that much about each other. So that may or may not work. You're going to have a really good reason for it. Now, if you roll really well, maybe I said that this feels really difficult because I don't think the goblins will care about each other. So I'm going to make this DC is going to be 17 for sure. Yeah, sure. Make me your intimidation check. Well, that seems like an intimidation check to me. And they roll natural 20. Sure, why not? Like, well, you definitely beat that. Okay, you find out that these goblins are brothers. No, not my brother. I'll do anything to save my brother. Yes, of course, I'll take you to the leader. Please just don't hurt him. And you grab them and take them in. Perfect, yeah, we'll get you to the negotiation. So now the negotiation is the next thing. And that negotiation is going to automatically be more difficult because of the way that you're getting into it. That's already going to be a hard difficulty negotiation, because you're coming in hostile with a hostage into the belly of the beast, and unfortunately that bugbear, whoever's in charge, is probably just going to immediately have somebody they'll probably kill the golem themselves and be like, you have no hold here, what are you doing? As the party gets surrounded by goblins, as all the attention has been brought down on them. So high risk, high reward. They could immediately go in if they blow that negotiation out of the water, because you have, of course, a bard or something who can roll a 5 and still pass that DC because they have such great modifiers to those checks. Like, okay, that's shrewd, cunning in action. Maybe this impresses the hobgoblin. That seems like a sort of thing that would impress a hobgoblin. The hobgoblin is impressed by this. He goes, all right, you can let the goblin go. We'll talk. I like the cut of your jib. We can discuss things. What do you have for trade? There you go. Adventure's completely different. And they're like, I don't know. We kind of like, I guess I could take that sword over there. You want to haggle a little bit. You don't want to be like, we want the magic sword. You're like, I don't know. What do you have? I guess the sword looks okay. And you can start at this sort of haggle negotiation that can kind of go on. That becomes a different social RP scene, right? Where you begin talking like this. Social RP scene goes bad. Maybe it becomes a fight. Maybe they decide things are going south. We're going to book it out of here. And now it becomes a flight scene instead, where you have a bunch of goblins that are chasing you through the caves as you run back towards the entrance. Can you remember the way to the entrance? As you burst out of there, how many goblins are going to chase you down into the tall grass? If they catch you, it becomes some sort of combat. You're not able to pull yourself out of the combat. The combat starts to, more reinforcements show up in combat. That tension grows, the pacing grows, everything. Again, once you start thinking about things as obstacles and not like solution-based problems, you're like, okay, you do stuff and then stuff just kind of reacts to you. And so you don't have to think that much about the design. You know the space. You know the creatures that are in the space. You know kind of what they're doing. You kind of have an idea of what's important to them, what they value, and how they would deal in this situation. You just use your best judgment, essentially. It's really not more difficult than that. Sometimes it feels really difficult, and I know I had this when I was first starting to Dungeon Master, when you had people who are like, "Oh, it's so easy." It's like, it doesn't feel easy. But I think that is because I didn't have this mindset shift to be like, oh, it's just an obstacle. That way, whenever they show up at the front and they don't fight the goblin guards, I'm like, oh, my prep is totally ruined now. I expected them to fight these goblins, and that way they'd get maybe the secret code off of them, the password that gets them deeper into there. Oh, but they didn't fight them. They just decided to talk to them, and they convinced them that they wanted to do trade with the leader. Great. That's perfect. Now I know that. Those guards go and give them the password. They go to that next, second layer of defense, of security, and they're going to use the password. And guess what? Now the player characters know the password. Works perfectly. Or if they decide to get that hostage and negotiate and be like, okay, we'll let you and your brother get out of here. Don't come back. Give us the password to get further in there. Maybe they don't ask about it, so maybe the goblins don't tell them. If the goblin feels like they're in a really, really delicate position, they might be like, hey, you're going to need this password to get through the door. Now, obviously, once you get through the door, they're going to realize you're not goblins, and you're going to have to deal with that. But here's the password. That'll at least get you through the door. And that's the negotiation for their brother's life, and they run off. Maybe they come back. Maybe they become friends of the party. Maybe they become hirelings for the party. Become your new favorite NPCs, just a couple of goblin brothers that hang out with them, that are really good at sneaking around and doing stuff. They speak goblin, which maybe nobody in the party speaks. So, you can, once obstacles and you're like, I don't really care how it's resolved, you just need to get around it. Or you fail the adventure, which generally you don't want to do. So yeah, just think about each exit of a scene is just you being like, okay, what is the new obstacle that is created because of the end of that scene? Until you get to what is going to be the climax of that, which might be that trade negotiation with the hobgoblin. Maybe it breaks down into a combat. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe the hobgoblin also hires them. Maybe the hobgoblin's like, you guys seem really capable. I've got a little bit of money because I just raided this village. I'd actually like to hire you for a job to go do something. That could be a very, very interesting way to... It takes a left turn in your campaign when you don't be like, oh, well, the goblins will obviously always attack on sight. Like, they don't have to. That doesn't have to be how they deal with things. They feel like they're in a secure position of power. You're in their, like, essentially hall or throne room, or what passes for that in the cave. And you're surrounded by goblins, so they feel pretty secure, but they're like, you did get in here. And you do seem capable because you're loaded up with weapons and armor and magic and stuff. I've got some stuff that I'd like taken care of. I have some money because I just raided this place. So if you want to go take care of this problem, maybe the whole reason we're here is because we got displaced by something else. Now that becomes a new side adventure they run off onto, if you want to do that. If not, they can be like, actually, we'd like you to attack the town. And then obviously they're going to... I don't say obviously. Probably. Your players are going to be like, yeah, we're not going to attack the town that hired us to get their stuff back. That's not good business. That's not good for business. Unless maybe you're playing some evil characters. Or some shady neutral characters who might do that. That you might run into that instead. But in general, probably not. You're probably not going to do that. Hopefully your players aren't doing that. Hopefully. But yeah, so you want to set that obstacle, not a solution, and really focus in on it, specifically when you're exiting scenes. And if you start thinking about that from transition to scene, it becomes a little bit easier to improvise on the fly and be like, okay, I think this is what they would do next. I think this would be the next reasonable thing that might bar their path as to what they're trying to get to. So, that's most of what we want to talk about. I just want to be like, so you just really need to remember, stop prepping those problems, because a problem, by definition, has a solution. Instead, think about prepping obstacles with a whole litany of possibilities that you probably can't think of every way it can be addressed. And that's great. You don't have to. You just have to interpret whatever cockamamie ideas that your players come up with to resolving the situation. You try to say yes as much as you can. Now, if they go full gonzo bonkers, you tell them that's not going to work. That's not. I don't care how good. I don't care about your natural 20 on your athletics check. You cannot jump the 30-foot chasm. That's not how that works. This is something that your character looks at and goes, well, that would be suicide. I'm not going to do that. Unless we had a jump spell, in which case they could. Once you start throwing magic, especially in the game in which magic is in the mix, magic allows characters to do things that are just beyond what we consider reasonable. So once that's in the game, again, you just try to say yes to things that, yes, this makes sense. Oh, you want to jump the 30-foot chasm? Well, obviously, you can't jump that far. Oh, but I have the jump spell that triples my jump movement. Okay, now you can. Now it seems reasonable that you could do that. Now, I might put that at the end. I don't typically like the jumping rules where it's just like your strength equals this long jump. It's more like, I think that this should give you, I think it should still be an athletics check because you can still screw up a jump. There's still, when we roll dice in the D&D game, one of the things that we want to look for is be like, okay, is there clear stakes? Is there something that happens if you fail this? If there's something that happens whether you succeed or fail this that's important, that means that there's stakes in some way, then you should be rolling dice for that. And that's the thing where it's like, if it's a 30-foot chasm that they're trying to jump across, and they have the ability to long jump, and they have the jump spell on them, it's like, yeah, that pretty much puts you in range to be able to do this. I have the room DC, and I think that you're going to be able to make this jump. I don't think it's going to be easier because of that. I think the only reason you're getting to do it is because of this. I might even say it might be difficult. It kind of depends on the DC of the room was already. If it was a 14, I might just leave it at 14 for an athletics check. And I would probably tell them what the DC is up front. They're like, hey, you think that you need to hit a 14 with an athletics check. That's you gauging how in-world difficult you think this jump is. You're like, if I get a good running start, I can make this jump. That's essentially it. If I don't get a good running start, I won't clear this jump. I'm going to fall in the chasm. Now, the chasm is, at that point, we'll just say it's also 30 feet deep. Okay, I know that as a third level character or whatever, I can probably take the 3d6 falling damage. Now, I'm also going to be down there, which now it takes time to, like, get a rope down there and pull me out or climb out. And anytime, like I said, that we start using, characters are using time within the game, doing actions that aren't progressing them towards their goal, that's when they start rolling random encounters. Like, okay, you throw down the rope, you start helping your barbarian climb back up. I need you to roll me a d6 to find out. If you roll a 1, we're going to have a random encounter. Some monsters are going to come across you while you're doing this. And then that becomes, again, depending on where they are, and if they're out in the wild, or if they're in the goblin cave, whether they're going to come in and be more hostile and immediately attack, if it's going to be more like, oh, they could be friendly and be like, they run up and start helping you, pulling stuff up, pulling this person up. They might want to trade with you. They might be like, hey, who are you? What are you doing here? They might interrogate you if they're not on your side. Or if they're super helpful with you, if they have some sort of limited resource they could use, you do that. Of course, if you're 30 feet down in the chasm and you still have the jump spell, I guess you could technically jump. I don't think you'll get all the way up with a jump spell. But it would definitely make it very quickly. So, I don't know. Maybe they wouldn't roll a random encounter if they still had the jump on them. If they kept the because I think, is jump concentration? I don't know off the top of my head. I don't think it is. I don't think it is. I think you should be fine. Or anyways, the person who's probably casting it on the barbarian. The barbarian is probably not the one who needs to do the concentration check. So, no worries. We just move on from that. But the idea is that you get this idea that you can make deeper encounters, that they're going to have these layers to them. It's very easy to kind of move between scenes, move between layers of encounters, depending on how your players want to basically tackle these obstacles. And it can always shift in the middle. Like we said, negotiations break down, they start running. We just transition to a new scene. Okay, that's becoming a flight scene now, where you're running away from the goblins, or you're chasing after the one goblin who's broken away from combat. So now that's going to be that different type of scene, because you're trying to keep them from finding one of the patrols or alerting somebody or whatever it is for some reason. Or they might decide, we're actually not going to chase that guy. We don't think he's going to do anything. So instead we're going to loot the bodies real quick. Okay? Or we're going to hide the bodies and start exploring further in. Okay? Sounds great. So when you're a DM and you start thinking about the obstacles, it's like, I don't care if they didn't kill all the goblins. I love that they didn't kill all the goblins, because that now allows me to add another little layer here in the cake of my D&D adventure. We're just putting layers in. One by... Sorry. We're just adding layers one by one. Add in there, and it becomes this nice, rich, velvety, delicious cake that we can all enjoy. I should have used a sandwich metaphor. Should have been made like a Dagwood sandwich. That would have been a much better turn of phrase. But that's what happens, I guess. That's what happens when you do it live. You don't get to plan it all out like that. But you get deeper encounters. You're going to have happier players who are going to feel a lot more engaged in the game, when they feel like every decision they make is going to have some weight that's going to change things however they... And they also have the freedom to truly approach things however they want to approach it, and they don't feel like they're very pigeonholed into only having to do one thing. And that's going to really make your game and specifically your world feel really, really alive, as whenever your player characters in the world take actions and the world just reacts to them. Like, oh, you do this thing? Well, then this happens. If you clear out this goblin cave completely and you kill everything that's in there, now there's potentially like a little vacuum of power. Who maybe in the area subsumes that and takes that power back? Is it the village? Is it some bandits? Is it, who knows, some other tribe of goblins, some kobolds? Could be anything. And so then the world just reacts. Once you think about that, okay, now what would be a new obstacle that might be in the area because this has happened? Obviously, those goblins wanted money. That was our original premise for them attacking the village and getting this magic sword. They needed supplies and or money for something. So now it can be like, what did they need that for? Now we can add that extra layer. Okay, maybe they needed it to pay off, let's say a dragon. Why not? They've got this sort of... They've got an arrangement where they have to pay off the dragon, and as long as they pay off the dragon, they're able to... maybe that's what I would do. How I might do it is be like, okay, what you got is like one spoke on a wheel. And so you have a whole bunch of this larger goblin organization or civilization or whatever you want to call it that's kind of spread out a bunch of different areas. They all need to raid and give tribute back to sort of the hub and whoever the king of the goblins is, or the leader, whoever they are, because they are paying off a dragon that's keeping them from being destroyed, or maybe it's just employing the dragon, honestly. Trying to keep the dragon docile, being extorted, essentially. So you could do that. That'd be a cool campaign, actually. Certainly a cool adventure, like a long adventure. Be like, oh, you keep dealing with these goblins who keep trying to get this money, and they're sending it off somewhere, and as you come in contact with different goblins, you start to put together pieces about why they need the money, who they're sending it to. You follow the trails of the money. You realize that they're talking about, let's call him Faranax. Who is Faranax? Well, it's very tropey. Anything with an X feels very tropey dragon name. Faranax, probably a dragon. Maybe you learn some lore about it. You talk to some locals and be like, oh, we know who Faranax is. They give you that insight and be like, where is he? Oh, well, he used to raid the countrysides a lot, but he doesn't do that as much anymore. Except he's been doing this very specific thing, which is maybe the goblins' greater goals, because they're hiring this dragon to do it. Maybe the dragon's only using them to build up their own wealth, so that way they can start their own kobold enclave somewhere, and this happens, this happens, this happens, reactions, our obstacles, and our payoff from that leads into other things. And you have encounters that build themselves into an adventure, and adventures that build themselves into a campaign very, very easily. So that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about talking about rethinking how we think about encounter design. We're not focusing necessarily on creating, this is a combat encounter, it must have a combat solution, and the obvious solution is that we kill all the monsters within that combat and move on to the next thing. No, these are very fluid. Your players are able to address it however they want. They just need to get past this obstacle to get to whatever their goal is. So that means that you have to have a goal, which tells you something about what you need to be doing for adventure design. Be like, okay, what are they trying to achieve? And try to put some time element on it. If you can't, then you can always use the pressure, like I said, of wandering monsters. If you're not going forward, you're in a hostile location, hostilities will happen upon you if you fart around too long. There's always a risk it could happen. But yeah, that's everything that I want to talk about this. Talk about the challenges and rethinking encounter design in that way. I want to go a little bit more into it because I talk quite often about using obstacles rather than problems, or being a little bit more open and fluid with that design. So I just wanted to showcase that a little bit more and go a little bit more in depth about how you can use it and how it can be really helpful, specifically as that transition tool. Be like, your players can engage with this however you want. It's going to lessen your prep because you don't have to think very specifically about the nuts and bolts of that way. That will actually hurt you. You need to keep things kind of loosey-goosey, a little bit more flexible. Be like, all I need to know, there are 2 guards and a warg here. They're actively guarding. They're paying attention. And then I don't need to know that they're brothers. That's something I can just improv. That's one of the things. Whereas if I don't, the fewer things I iron out and like nail down before we start, the more flexibility I have to make it, again, have that fluidity to fill the vessel shape that it needs to. That encounter would be like, okay, you did roll that natural 20 on the intimidation check as you had the dagger to this goblin's throat. And, you know, I might even, no insight check required. You know that this goblin is acting surprisingly strange as to what you know for goblins. Goblins, in general, don't seem to care about other goblins living and dying very much. This goblin seems to care a lot about you having a dagger to that specific goblin's throat. Then you learn that, oh, they're siblings. Oh, well, now I can be like, oh, well, I'm going to let your brother live, but you guys got to get out of here and don't come back. And you make that intimidation. Well, you already made the intimidation check, so they'd make some sort of morale check once they got out there. I'd make it for them to see if they double back. Incredibly unlikely with that natural 20. I might even just use that as the DC. Be like, okay, you've got like a 24 or something. They need to make like a wisdom save of a 24, which I don't think they can even do. So they have to roll a natural 20 to succeed. They don't. They go off into the tall grass, never to be seen again. Maybe they come across them later. They can hire them as hirelings or to like watch their things. Maybe they have the warg with them still. So it's 2 brothers and their dog, essentially. And they could be friends of the party. Or maybe they go and do stuff with other goblins. Maybe they just never show up again. You don't have to have them show up again. But it's always nice to have characters like that circle back into the story at some point in a few sessions and be like, hey, here's this person that you remember that you did this solid for, and maybe they can do, you got yourself a little positive karma in the world, so maybe they show up and give you a little positive karma back. When you do, and that's one of the things that I try to do as Dungeon Master, be like, get the player characters do nice things in the world. People are more likely to do nice things for them, or show up in their, hour of need for some reason. I like to think of it as the D&D version of the Mysterious Stranger perk from Fallout, where it's like, hey, sometimes there's just a guy that you don't know who shows up with a gun and kills one of the monsters. And, tips their hat, their fedora, and then just wanders off back into the world again. You're like, what's going on with that? I have no idea who that person is. Except in this case, you would know who they are. You're like, oh, you're getting attacked. These wolves are attacking you. This wolf has knocked over the wizard and pinned them down to the ground. And he's about to swipe at them again. This warg barrels into the side of them and knocks them off of you, and be like, and these two goblins run into the fray and start helping you attack the wolves. Fight off these wolves. And then that's a perfect thing. Debt repaid. Don't ever have to see these characters again if they decide not to hire them for anything. But yeah, that's everything I wanted to talk about. We do still have a little bit of time, so I think we are going to do a little bit of that Arctic hex mapping. I'll need to pull that stuff up. So while I do that, I'm going to take a short break. I'm going to refill a little bit on the empty coffee here, and we'll do that for, I don't know, maybe we got a little bit of time left. At least 30 minutes, maybe 45. We'll see how it goes. And we'll see how my voice holds out. It's a little today. Probably since I DM'd last night. But yeah, so hopefully this was super useful for you. If so, or you have your own thoughts about it, similar structures you things, or different ways you think about encounter building, make sure to toss those in. I'm going to take a look at those. I'm always open to see how different people deal with these same sort of common dungeon master, game master issues and how they approach them and overcome them. Because my way's just one way. It's just the way that tends to work for me. And so I want to make sure I share it in case it's useful for you guys. So yeah, throw those things down. I want to take a look at them. Otherwise, I'm going to take my break, get my coffee. We're going to come back, and I'm going to pull up our hex map, and we're going to keep working on those Arctic hexes, filling them out at those region hexes. So hang on, and I'll be back in just a little bit. I am back. So we said that we are going to do a little hex mapping. Let's go ahead and pull that up. So as usually goes with these hex mapping, anytime we do this on the stream, I'm just going to kind of go through the motions. You'll watch me work on it. It is a bit slow, a bit tedious. I find it somewhat therapeutic to do. I find it fun, in a very relaxing kind of fun. And so I'm gonna jump through and do that. But because of the nature of it, I want to make sure that you guys feel free to ask questions about whatever you want. It doesn't necessarily have to be about the mapping. It can be kind of a free-form Q&A kind of section, and I'll actually write that in the chat here in a second once I finish pulling this stuff up. Just because I didn't make it. I did not. We're good. Nope, not what I'm trying. Sorry, I'm getting things set up and I didn't finish my sentence. Alright. Like I said, doesn't necessarily need to be about the mapping that we're doing. Primarily because I want... there's not going to be that much to probably talk about the actual physical mapping aspect. So it's really about asking whatever you want, so that way we can have a little Q&A into it. All right, we're right here. I think this is where we start here. I know you can't see it yet. I haven't pulled it up. Well, here just a second. Here. Perfect. Let's see. I'm not gonna. I don't think I'm gonna show you guys the dice. I don't think that we're gonna do that. I'll keep that off to the side, so that way you only have to. That way, because I think it'll be more useful to seeing the dice to see the sheet, so I'm not flipping around too much. Otherwise, we're gonna spend a bunch of time flipping through tabs. I think you'll get a little bit more out of just watching these guys instead. Seeing these two instead. Move that. Done that, done that, done that. Right. I need to open my... just open up some Google Dice. So you're not missing much on that side. I'll be honest. That's the only thing that's going to be up that you're not going to be able to see. Well, let's jump back in. All right. So we're doing region hex mapping. So I've been doing this thing where I've been mapping the entirety of my world. My world isn't Earth-like. Technically, it's a little bit larger than Earth. But let me pull it up. Because I wanted to show you, before we get too far along, exactly what we're talking about here. Go to the region maps. Yeah, that'll do. Yeah, I just want to make it. I'm just gonna pull it up just so you guys can see it, so you can understand sort of the scale we're working at. So the atlas. So I've done this before. We talked about that. I have 4 different layers of hexes that I use that kind of fit into each other like a nesting doll. And so the largest one is an atlas hex, which is how I look at generally like the big world map. And each one of those hexes is about 360 nautical miles across, which is 400 something statute or normal miles, as we might call it. It's a lot. I know I have it written down. I just don't have it memorized. But we're gonna go ahead. I'm gonna move over to a workspace so you guys can look at what I'm looking at. But now I'm doing the next level down. So I have that big map, which is not that impressive to look at. It just looks like a little hex map, the 60 by 30 hex map. Now we're dropping into the region-sized hex. So there are 31 region hexes within each atlas hex. So we're taking, I don't even know what that math is off the top of my head. It's a lot. It's a lot of hexes. Anyways, there are 6 region hexes across for each atlas hex, is how that nests. So let me share this guy. Window capture. There we go. So this is my smallest continent. As you can see, again, each one of these hexes is about 60 nautical miles, which is like 66 miles across or something like that. And that's each little hex in here. That's a ton of hexes, so we can see them. We can really zoom in here, see how they are. So any of those big things are these giant, anything that's labeled on here is a larger Atlas level location in the world. There's going to be major castles that are there, grand cathedrals and churches, ruined cities and ruined temples, Temple of Elemental Evil. Actually, Temple of Elemental Evil probably wouldn't even be that large. But we're talking about, when we talk about like major religious sites, we can be talking about things like the Hagia Sophia, Rock of Gibraltar kind of things, as well as major natural world wonders. So it could be things like the Grand Canyon kind of scale, things, Pyramids of Giza, giant cities. We're talking about your like Parises, your Londons, your Tokyos, your New York cities, your Timbuktus, stuff like that. So yeah, this is my smallest continent. There are 3 continents in the world. We're working on the middle one, which is both the middle in the world and the middle in size. But it does kind of show you. So this is what the hex map going to kind of look like that we're working on. This is what it looks like when it's fully fleshed out and kind of finished. And we strip away everything else, so you can kind of see here. Let me zoom out a little bit. Oh, you couldn't see that anyways. Fine. There you go. So this is what it kind of looks like. So zoom in a little bit. On the bottom we have this purple area. So white's gonna be like the fully Arctic, almost ice cap. Purple is tundra. Then we get into our boreal taiga area where we have a bunch of just this straight path of pine trees that kind of goes across stuff. The dry forest kind of on the right side. We've got some mountains. They're kind of spread out through here, as well as some big highlands. There's a big highland area over here. And it breaks things up, and you can see that down here the things get a little desert here in the middle. Some light, more almost Mediterranean chaparral scrubland kind of side over here. Lots of forest over here. Some more mountains that are in the way. Lots of little islands that are around as well. The light blue is sort of like the coastal shelf, so it's the shallower water, and then once you get into the dark blue, those are like the deep ocean, where you're not going to be able to really get down to the bottom most of the time. Without some of the very special magic equipment that allows you to do so. Then up here, this is equatorial region, so you have a whole bunch of just rainforest jungle up here at the top. But yeah, that's our smallest continent. Kind of see the shape of it and everything that's kind of going on with it. Kind of gives you everything that's going on. There's also rivers on here, which I don't think you can probably see at this scale. You have to really zoom in. But yeah, there are also rivers on here moving around, as well as a bunch of lake systems. They're in here. A relatively large lake over here. I mean, quite large, actually. System of lakes that are kind of over here. I would probably call like this area is a little bit more, this kind of stripe of area is a little bit more of that northern US, southern Canada region, where you kind of get into the Land O'Lakes kind of area. It's just like there are just lakes everywhere, thousands of lakes. Sometimes they're big old lakes, like the Great Lakes in the US, or small seas. But yeah, that's it. So we're going to do that. Let's hop in and actually look at what we're going to be working on, though. Let me swap that over. That should be here. Okay, so this is the hex that we're going to start in. We've done, this is our third row of hexes down here. You can see you go very far to the left and very far to the right. We're on this third hex, and we'll zoom out just a little bit. We're at 22. Let's go to 2. So, yeah, just to give you an idea of kind of what the world looks like. or this middle continent looks like. So it's much, much larger than the other continent. And we're still way down here. We're still very much in the Arctic section. So the way that this particular continent works is this continent, the very bottom here is the very bottom of the map. So this is the pole. So this is, imagine that Antarctica was attached to basically South America. And you're starting to see how that works. So this is actually one full continent that works out and then circles around the pole as well, which is very interesting. Which means that there's not a full Arctic Sea that circumnavigates the globe, which is very interesting too. So it really, this world has some, because I did try to build it off some relatively solid natural science. So it does actually change how things are formed in the world as to how those natural processes change by not having a fully circumnavigatable Arctic Ocean. So yeah, we are starting right here in shallow water. So usually when I'm rolling these, pop over here. So usually when we're talking about occupation, whether there's going to be a point of interest, which is what we're doing at this point, obviously I've done all the actual biome stuff. I've mapped all the biome stuff already. Trust me, this thing took forever. And this part takes even longer, surprisingly. But that's okay. It's a labor of love, and I love to do it. So, we're going to jump in. Now, every time, usually it's a D6 that I roll to show up if whether there's going to be one of these points of interest guys that are popping up all over the place. Now, when we're in this light water like this, it's actually, I roll a D10. And then if it's the deep ocean like this, I roll a D100. So it's very unlikely that you're going to have points of interest in the deep ocean. Just because whether it's islands or under the water, there's just not that much stuff that would be considered points of interest as far as D&D adventurers would be concerned. Put it that way. Now, we have this major religious site that's hanging out here. Which is actually this one, right? Yeah, that's the Charity Almshouse. So, I've also talked about this before. So this is a Heartlands area, which means that there are a bunch of people that live within this area. Which means that the hexes, the larger hexes that are around it, these Atlas hexes, and those red hexes are just the boundaries of where the larger hexes would be. So it helps me understand when I'm mapping where I am. Each of these hexes that's around is a frontier hex, so there's a 50% chance that there's going to be something here on the D6, so I got to roll a 1, 2, or 3. Which means there's a 30% chance in these light waters, in these coastal waters, and a 3% chance in the egg waters. There's going to be something there. I said I was going to put it in chat, so I'm going to put it in chat now. I think that'll work. So feel free to ask any D&D related questions for some Q&A. You don't actually have to, it doesn't have to be about the mapping. I should try that too. Mapping. Da-da-da. There we go. Now it's in chat. That way anybody who drops in later and sees it can know that they can ask it about whatever, whenever, and we'll take a look at it. Just so there's a little bit more interaction, because otherwise it's just me talking about stuff that I'm doing. Which is fine if that's what you're going to watch. But it's also free time for you to ask me questions if you have anything you want me to get my take on or whatever. Or if you want to ask about the process, that's fine too. Alright, so I need to start rolling some D10s. Now this is going to be off screen for you guys. Alright, 1, 2, I'm just counting X's go, 3 that don't have anything in them, 4, 5, and 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here's our first point of interest. And our point of interest is going to be a D20 roll. Alright, we got a 12. Roll twice and combine results. Nice. Alright, so we're going to roll 2 D20s. And I'm going to roll D6 and D20 before that. 6 and 11, 7 and 6. Alright. Up here, I have down here, and this little thing right here, which just kind of gives me a theme for what's going on. So I rolled a 6, which is always going to be weird. We're in the marches. It was going to be weird anyways. And I rolled an 11. So there's some sort of Fae theme to this. And I rolled a 7 and a 6 on the actual things, which means that we have a meeting place and a dungeon or lair. I like it. All right, let's start off with the. What do we think with the meeting place with the dungeon lair? I'm thinking like could be like a barrow situation, maybe. Maybe could be that. Yeah, for some reason the barrow mounds are kind of jumping out to me, even though technically that's a religious site, though. I mean, those are dungeons. Maybe it helps us. Let's roll for what the dungeon's gonna be first. So we have basically this right here, which tells us kind of what they are. I rolled a 6. Okay, so it's a vault or something. Okay, so they're holding something of power here. Okay, maybe, so the meeting place, what kind of meeting place we're going to do? Roll 2d6s in fine, or whatever. 3 and a 1. A recurring fair, holiday fairgrounds, and a tribal moot. Yeah, I like this idea that maybe it's a thing that they have to come back to once in a while. Maybe they have to repower. Maybe this is like a magical vault that's holding something, some sort of powerful magic that's holding maybe something fey. Well, let's put it this way. I'm just gonna roll an oracle check for me. Is it the fey who are meeting here, or the fey who's trapped? Fey. All right, so it's not the fey who's meeting here. So I'm gonna say it's a fey thing that is trapped here, being held within the vault. Now, I rolled a vault rather than a prison, but I do like the prison aspect. That makes maybe more sense to me. Where it's holding something, protecting some sort of fey dominion. I mean, it makes sense that it's here, that it's some sort of glamour that maybe they have to meet to every once in a while to restore the glamour over, and it protects whatever this Arctic fey dungeon is. This vault of something. Let's some more info on that. I like it though. Let me see. What was my structure here? Okay, APL 11. Okay. 4, 5. APL 11 through 16. I know this is going to be a dungeon plus meeting place. You know, it's going to be Fae themes. So yeah, I'm thinking that there's a seasonal gathering of Fae to, I guess, re-up the glamour. How do I say that though? To recharge, yeah, recharge. Glamour. Oh, you are, right? Glamour. Over the vault. Do we know what the vault holds in it? Not necessarily. We don't really know exactly what the vault holds in it. And that's okay. As I've said before, when I do these mapping streams, I don't have to have every detail ironed out. Just like we talked about earlier about creating the obstacles, I'm just creating a location to be interacted with. If I have a great idea for what's in there, I throw it in there. If I don't have a great idea for it, I go, I'm going to hold on to it. Now, hold on. Now, we did say that this is not Fae that meet here, right? It's a Fae thing that's in there that they're trying to protect. How would you glamour it against Fae, though? Ooh, I've got one. Alright, so it's a seasonal gathering to replace iron hinges. Hinge like Stonehenge. So basically you have these pieces of slabs of iron or cold iron that are driven into the ground to protect the Fae from getting into the vault. And those iron hinges rust all the time, and as they oxidize, they become less powerful to keep the Fae away, so they have to show up once a season to replace these huge iron wedges that they drive into the ground to keep the Fae from getting their hands on whatever's in this vault. Fae from recovering, and we'll just say question mark in the vault. This way we're going to say dungeon. Yeah, that's a pretty cool location. What's going on with that? No idea. No idea yet. But let's see what else is going on here. Alright, so one faction or multiple meet here. Look at nearby hexes for ideas. That's a good idea. Let's see. Now, right now we don't have any nearby hexes. So we don't know who these could be. Now we do know that we got this mage over here. Maybe they have something to do with it. Could be. While we're thinking about it, let's go ahead and drop our little stamp here. So this is going to be a meeting place, right? Wait, which one is meeting place? Meeting place is star? Meeting place, reticle. Okay. I don't always use the same thing, so I've been trying to write them down and be a little bit more uniform about it, because I'm not always great at doing that. And I do know that the dragon here is our monster lair. We just dropped both of them, because both of those things are here. So, some little island that's out there, maybe it's underwater. I'm going to assume it's probably an island, though. Though, having to replace the iron hinges so often would make sense for it to be underwater. I don't have to determine that now, though. But it could be on an island out there, it could be under the waves. The cold, deep, Arctic, cold water that they have to dive into. They take cold damage every round they're in there. Do that unless they have some way to keep themselves warm. Could be a fun adventure. I like it. So, what else do we need to add to these? So, the meeting place, we know what they're there. Alright, is there any occupation here? So we are in the marches. So let's roll a d6. Settlement here. We rolled a 4, so it is indeed occupied. Which means it's occupied by a village, which is somewhere between 400 and 1,000 people. This level, so 600... 120 people. Which makes us think that this is probably going to be on an island. There's a little village there, and some population, some people live on this. Presumably an island at this point. Deep in this Arctic Sea, North Sea kind of feeling. Incredibly dangerous place to be, an incredibly cold place to be. Makes sense that this is for an average party level of 11 to 16. This is going to be a very difficult thing to deal with. Common adventurers or travelers who come across, we'll roll twice on here. I think most of these I've actually been rolling 2d8 on. Couple. So sometimes it's a really great thing to do if you don't do this with tables already, random tables, is to roll twice on the table and try to combine them like we did here, or choose whichever one kind of makes the most sense. I rolled a 1 and an 8. So 1 is adventurers, guards, or mercenaries. Makes sense. 8 is traders, monsters, and warbands. Yeah, I like it in, like, maybe there's a constant, like, fey attacks on the area. Maybe there's mercenaries? What do we think? Mercenaries? I do like mercenaries. I could definitely throw that in as being, like, part of the Bloody Heather, which is the primary mercenary organization in this world. They're kind of like the Shintirum of this world. They're sort of a Blackwater... huge, or Blackwater or Blackrock, I can't remember. Mercenary group. Huge. And this would be like, if you really, really screwed up, this would be the assignment you get. It's like, no, you get to go sit on the island in the middle of the Arctic Sea. Cool. Great assignment. And fight a bunch of fey warbands that show up. Like that. So... 1/6 chance to encounter a warband or mercenaries. Let's say mercenary guards. So sometimes they show up and there's not anybody there. Every once in a while you show up and there's a fey warband there, or mercenary guards that are there. I like it. Oh, that's right. This is a March check, so actually there's actually technically a half chance, or a 3 in 6 chance that you're going to encounter one of those guys. I like it. I like it a lot. Alright, that's everything we need from meeting place. Let's go over here. Let's look at dungeon layer real quick. Alright, so we know it's complex. We know that it is occupied. It's got a village on top of it. And do we need a capstone monster villain CR for the... And we know what the CR is. We don't necessarily need to do any of the extra stuff. And some of this kind of just goes into building dungeons, which we don't need to get into at this point. Alright, so we started off with a really, really in-depth one. Usually they're not this in-depth. Usually we just punt through them pretty quickly. But this one we were a little bit slow on. Alright, let's keep moving. Up, what do you know? I rolled immediately a 2. So there's going to be something in here. What's it going to be? It's a 4, which I believe... No, Travel Haven. What are we using for Travel Haven? We're using the art. APL. Yeah, Travel Haven. So a Travel Haven is just any place you go to. It can be an inn, be anything. It's some place where you can generally rest peacefully. Generally. But it's also a place where you can get adventures and stuff. So we got a Travel Haven. Alright. What kind of theme do we have? Rolled a 2. Which I think is going to put us at... Yeah, that puts us at... We got the wrong thing. That's going to put us at... I don't actually need that. It's going to put us at Artificial for sure. And 8's going to put us at Giants. Okay, we got some Giants with Giant theme. Doesn't necessarily mean that there are Giants here, but something about this... Something we can pick on when I need to... It's a little helpful improv tool. Be like, what's the thing that could be here? It's some way related to giant. That could mean that there are, if there are whales here, they're giant whales. If there are runes here, they're giant runes. Which might be size, it might just be the language. We get to play real loosey and goosey with that stuff. We rolled a trouble. Alright. I'm gonna roll 2d6 on Haven type. 1 and a 2. Cabin or hunting lodge, gazebo, pergola, or pilgrim's rest. Yeah, no, I like hunting lodge. Right, because this is in the water. Let's go like this is a big. Yeah, let's like a maybe like a. Even though technically that would be kind of a little bit more like a high traffic campsite. That's fine. We'll go with that. It's gonna be like a seal hunting lodge or something like that, or whale hunting. Yeah, whale hunting lodge. There we go. A whale hunting lodge. I like it. Alright, we got any people who are gonna be living here? Yep, we sure do. Actually, nope. I rolled a 1. And I'm looking at the wrong thing. We're in the March, so that's technically a monster. Excellent. So we're gonna have some sort of monsters. Well, our theme was giant, so I think there's going to be giants. So this is the legitimate, like, this is just going to be a giant settlement. So, giant whale hunters. We're going to say giants. And we'll actually put it on the top row. Giants. Gamma. Whale hunting lodge. And they got a village. Here. Population. So we got sort of like an almost Inuit kind of feel here, which is gonna be pretty cool. Oh, can't use that roll. Can't use that roll. Gotta roll at least a 4, guys. Come on. On this D10. There we go. Rolled a 7. Alright, population 735. And I'm going to go ahead and put this, just in case I would forget, this is going to be a giant village. There's a whole bunch of giants that live here. But the thing is that this is a safe haven, so they're relatively friendly. They've got to be somewhat friendly. They're not going to be immediately hostile. So you want to go visit the the whale and probably like giant walrus hunting giants on their little whale hunting lodge that's out in probably an island somewhere. Seems cool. Maybe you can do like a, I don't know, maybe a Moby Dick kind of thing where you hunt a giant white whale. Something of that nature could be fun. Anything else we need to add this? Oh, our common travelers. Let's roll 2d8 on that. Alright, I got a 5 and a 6. Messengers, resource, transport. Pilgrims or religious official retinue. 6 doesn't really make sense for this. I don't think there'd be a lot of pilgrims or religious officials or the retinue moving through a whale hunter's camp. I can't imagine their lodge. So resource transport makes the most sense to me. Like this is where you're getting like that whale oil, whale ivory, ambergris, all that stuff. So yeah, this is gonna be like resource trading. So there is a 3 and 6 to encounter resource transport. And I'll just put this down here that we're gonna be talking about like whale oil, ivory, ambergris is a thing that's often I don't think anybody uses it anymore, but it used to be used in like perfume a lot. Which is funny when you think about what it is and you go, eh. Like people really like bezzers and you're like, that's kind of a gross thing actually. Like, essentially like, look at this very valuable kidney stone. It's not the same thing, but it's kind of like that. Cool, got that going. Nice, whoop. Step back. Need to be here, all right. Let's keep moving forward. D10s, what's our next thing gonna be? All right, not that one. I think that's... right. Okay, not put it on. Have it on here? Weird. Be on here. Oh, here we go. Where's it? Yeah. Alright, so we're in the marches, so we're in this column, by the way. So yeah, okay, 1 through 3. It was like, I'm pretty sure, right? It is indeed 50%. So I rolled a 3. Or D10. So we're gonna be right here. Oh, sorry, actually this should be, that won't work. That's the wrong hex. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So down here is where our next point of interest is going to be. It's going to be a D20 roll, and we rolled a 5. I think it's a crossing. Yeah. Crossing and or settlement. All right, so we need a theme. Three. All right, so we rolled a 3, and that's going to be natural, and 9 is going to be elemental. Okay, so we got an elemental theme that's going on here. Yeah, 11 through. Oh gosh, done it now. Accidentally locked myself. I hate that there's a lock button right next to my numpad. And I accidentally hit it and locked myself on my computer. Went immediately to the lock screen. Not what I'm trying to do. It was a crossing. What did we say the theme was? Oh, an elemental. Well, we just put crossing and put elemental. Yeah, we can leave it all up here. That's fine. Doesn't need to be perfect. It's just working. We're just throwing stuff down. Just throwing shit down. All right. Is it manned? It is not manned, so it's not going to be told either. Is it? What's its repair look like? Okay, it's in. Uh, actually, it's in disrepair. All right, so whatever it is, it's a disrepair, and it's not manned. We can add those in here. We'll go unmanned. Repair. In addition to disrepair, is it dangerous? Hey, buddy, it for sure is. So disrepair means it might not work. Dangerous means it might stop working while you're using it, which is a big difference. And dangerous. So it means like if this is a boat or something like that, there's a chance that when you're out there, the ferry might just sink, or its mast might fall down, or anything like that that can just really kind of screw up your day. Really going to put you in a not great situation to use this crossing. But we don't know the specifics of the crossing yet. Let's roll 2d4. And this, we'll try to put them together if we can. Alright, I rolled a 2 and a 4. So a bridge, hewn stairs, or ladder. None of those technically make sense for being where this is. A 4 is a guide or wayfinding mark or ferry. So it could be a ferry. Just a place where you can charter a boat, maybe. Now, it could be some sort of elemental. I like the idea that maybe this is where you hire an elemental to... What do you think about maybe hiring an air elemental to fill the sails of your ship? I like that maybe instead. So not necessarily a guide, not necessarily a ferry, like you gotta bring your own ship. If you do, you can hire this elemental who will, you can pander it to whatever reason. It might not take coin. You might have to give it some sort of favor or something like that, or do a little quest for it, maybe. Something like that. And then you can call upon it. Maybe it gives you an island that allows you to call it once every, you know, whenever. You blow the horn and I will come to your aid and I will fill your sails with wind. Sort of thing. Very Odysseus. Very Odyssey. I like it. I'm down with it. Let me... Alright. So how is that? We've got our elemental theme. So I'm gonna say, yeah, this is, you can... let's look at... I don't always do this, but this would be a good opportunity. So let's look at these guys. Now this doesn't have everything in here, but I do want to see... Get some elementals in here. And are there any that go in... We can do aquatic. And we can do arctic. And we can do ghost. I'll take any one of those. And we need an appropriate CR. 11 through 16. That would definitely put us in Ginny and merit range. Yeah, I think a Ginny works. I think Ginny can be of... Can Ginny be of any element? I can't remember off the top of my head. I feel like they changed this in every edition. Actually, take me this. Get out of here. Elemental Demise. Spellcasting. Multi-attack. Yeah, create a whirlwind. This will very much work. But also being a genie will... tend to be a little, not necessarily mercurial, just, it's gonna be a little monkey's paw. I think that's gonna be the dangerous thing. You can hire Ginny to, basically put wind in your sails. That's fine. I like that. It'll work out perfectly. Or loan you an elemental or something. I don't need to know exactly what that looks like at this point. Like, it is dangerous. We're gonna say, I'm just gonna put in quote. Gonna put in quotes there, and monkey's paw or parentheses, monkey's paw. Be like, hey, if you try to make a deal with this dude, he is going to try to screw you. He's going to pay very close attention to the wording you say, and depending on what you give him, he may or may not want money too. He might want something else. Because money's a little bit too easy, especially for we're talking about third tier adventurers who are in those party levels between 11 to 16. They got gobs of money and nothing to spend it on. So there's no reason being like, I want you to pay me 5,000 gold. They'll be like, yeah, whatever, here's 5,000 gold. We want it to be more of a thing, more of an encounter. So they might want something different. But we do know that there's going to be a village here. So I like that. Let's see. Look at our guys here. Roll a d6 for me. We're in the march. We rolled a 3, so these are monsters. So we're going to say that this is an elemental village. Sounds good to me. Which makes sense for this area, because this area has quite a large population of Genasi. Which makes sense in the world, that's very elementally tied. And we need a population for our elemental village here. So not all villages are humans. 840. Also, use a thing that's called BP. That's one of the reasons why I want to know how many people actually live in this place. I use a thing that I call BP, which is buying power of any place that you go to, which is just 10% of the population. You can find goods and services or to buy or sell up to that cost. So this is 840, so you could buy anything. Players could buy anything, any single item or service up to 84 gold's worth, or sell anything up to 84 gold's worth. Because again, it is just kind of a village in the middle of nowhere, so you can buy healing potions for sure. You can find those. But if you want to buy uncommon magic items, which kind of start in the hundreds of gold, you're not going to find a lot of those here. You got to go to a relatively large city to be able to find those actively on offer. Or you use the downtime rules, where it's like you want to buy or sell a magic item where you put work into it to try to actually find a buyer. But something like this, you would find like a consignment store or like an auction house or something like that where you could buy those kinds of things. If you were in a very large city, you'd be able to get some of those. But you're talking about 400 gold, so you need a population of 4,000 or above, so you need to at least be in the city. Which this is not. Alright, we keep moving then. So as you see, I use these tables, and these are my own tables, and you get a lot of fun stuff that's kind of going on here. We'll get through this text probably. That's probably as far as we're going to get today, because it does go a little slow, and it goes especially slower when I'm talking about it. Alright, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 8, 5, 7, 8. Alright, technically that last one should be a D6 because it's going to be right here on this island. Alright, that's nothing there. Go back. On a cold streak. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So we got on a little bit of a cold streak, which makes sense, again, because we got to roll a 3 or lower on land. That's a D6, so it's about 50% in this area, but when you're in water, it's only a 30%. So we had a few up here at the top, we had some pretty good luck, then we had some right in the middle, we got not a lot going on. Down here at the bottom, we got something. Alright, let's do the theme first this time, before we start looking at stuff. Alright, so, go. Theme, just always do this. And we can actually, in some of these, I don't know if I've done this or not. Some of them, when I go through and I'm actually mapping them, I'll figure out what the actual average party level will be. I'll roll for that. I'm not doing that right now, though. Alright, I got a 3 and a 5. That's going to be a natural... Not 20. A natural beastie. Okay, so this is going to be a beast theme here. So we got theme. Problem with the beast theme is that there are not a lot of high CR beasts. So when we're doing stuff that's in this sort of region area and higher, we kind of have to stretch a little bit on our meaning of beast. Or it does mean that if it's something like this, I'm going to have to make a custom monster, or I'm going to have to pick like a monstrosity or something to like cross it with. To basically homebrew my own kind of owlbear situation. Alright, what is here? Alright, I rolled a 19. Remains. Ooh. So that is pirate flag. We got some remains here. I like it. Still remains. Might just be a big old skeleton. I'm thinking of last time that I played a game that had a big skeleton like that. I guess would be Breath of the Wild, where you walk in the desert and you're like, oh, there's just a big old skeleton hanging out here. What's that about? All right, what's the age of this? All right, I rolled a 6. This is something ancient. So, all right, ancient remains. Cool. Dig it. Dig it. So there are remains and ruins. Remains are objects, like wagons, creatures, dead things. Those are remains. Ruins would be like structures and places that have been dilapidated. Fallen victim to time. What type of remains are we dealing with? And, ooh, disappeared with a cryptic clue. This is our Croatoan kind of situation. And for those who are not familiar with Croatoan, that is the word that was found carved into a tree when all people disappeared at Roanoke, the colony in the U.S. And they have no idea where those people went. I don't know now if we have ever found any empirical evidence as to what may have happened to them. But back then they were starving, and they wrote that on the tree. They carved it into the tree, and those people just kind of disappeared. Not sure where they went. Alright, ancient remains. Disappeared. Cryptic clue. Interesting. We've got a cryptic clue. See that? I like it. What else do we got? Apparent cause. So at this point, it might be just guessed at cause. A 6, survival. So they could have, and the examples we have down here is they suffocated. They died from exposure, dehydration, disease, starvation. Exposure probably makes the most sense here, seeing how cold it is. I like exposure. And actually, we'll put it down here. We've got exposures. We're just making our Lego. We're just grabbing our Lego bricks right now. And what is the status of our remains? Because they could be, well, they are indeed haunted remains. So ancient haunted remains. Now something like this, you could build out using this table. And you could build something out like the ghost from Return of the King, where you have that they have to fulfill their duty to be laid at rest, kind of thing, because of some deal that they've done. But this is going to be more of a mystery, probably. Now we need some sort of beast that makes sense here. Let's get to here. We'll get these all work. So instead, I'm going to knock out element and go down to beast, and we'll see what it gives us. Now we're only capping out at CR6 here, which is not great. We do have. Do we want to put it in the water? We could. It's more likely that it's in the water, I think. Well, I'm gonna oracle myself. Is it something water based? I think that's pretty likely. So +3 on this roll. I rolled a 2, so +5, so it is not water. So we're gonna go. It could be flight or land base. Let's just ask. Is it flight base? No. All right, so we're gonna go with land base. So mammoth makes a lot of sense. We've got some mammoth stuff in here too. I do like the idea of like a woolly crocodile. I like that a lot. But killer whales, giant sharks. Again, we want something terrestrial, so maybe a furry scorpion would be funny. Like a woolly scorpion. I like it. And the problem is that, as with all of these things, the CR is so low. But also these things have disappeared, apparently. So let's start noodling around. Okay, so we know that's gonna be. We're gonna know it's gonna be a land beast of some sort. Again, it doesn't have to be a beast. That's just kind of what we roll for our theme. But it could just be. We'll just put land dwelling, and it has to be beast themed. These could be people that went missing. That's perfectly reasonable too. Which should give us a little bit better CRs to work with if we actually need to stat this up for combat at some point. Let's look at inside of this. We know that it's haunted, so let's maybe look at undead. What do we got for undead? I'm not sure if the undead even have anything. Death Knight's pretty cool. It's hard to turn down the Death Knight. I could very much feel like this is a haunted king or knight or somebody or warrior who was leading people and they disappeared. They got a nice throw a beast theme on them that would make sense. Mammoth's very easy. I like it though. I like this. So I think people assumed that they had died from exposure. So I need to determine now if the remains about these people, I think they're going to be objects and items. So maybe we're not going to find the people. I think that makes the most sense because then we can make them hunted. Oh, but though, Ghost Mammoth sounds pretty rad. A herd of ghost mammoths, like Ghost Riders in the Sky style, sounds super cool. Yeah, I'm gonna use that. Why am I even thinking about it? All right, this is a Ghost Riders in the Sky situation. Love it. So this is gonna be a mammoth graveyard. It's gonna be a mammoth graveyard. Apparent cause. Death cause is going to be exposure. It is haunted by a Death Knight. I guess Death Knight by itself is really high though. I mean, the undead can be anywhere. We don't really need to think too much about this. Oh, that actually. Why are mind flayers under? Oh, it's a lich. That's why. Lich. Lich. Let's say that these were lings. Say that they're low. I'm just trying to figure out some ideas. The holder zombie. Nah, I don't like that. Heck. Sword Wraith Commander. Sword Wraith Mastermind. Those guys make a little bit more sense. How many Death Knights could I get for here, though? That's too many. That's far too many. That's even going to be, yeah. So probably not Death Knights. Death Knights are going to be a little bit high. So we need something lower than CR17. Vampires and spellcasters. I really want something spooky dooky. I really want something incorporeal. I guess wraiths are the closest things. Because Abolic is corporeal, right? Creature from the fantasy. You're getting the. Yeah, they're corporeal. But they do have that aura of annihilation. This could be a cool one. The Death Gaze. Yeah, and then I'd probably give them like some. If I wanted them to be like Ghost Riders of the Sky, I'd probably give them mounts, skeletal horse mounts, to fly through the sky, and give them some sort of lasso or something like that to be able to grapple people at a distance. Basically give it net statistics, but they can drag you with them when they move. But you are grappled, so they can move half speed on their mounts and drag you with them. Cool. That sounds like a pretty dope encounter to me. Yeah. Alright. So they're haunted by... Ghost Cowboys. Products up here. Because products do have... Even though they're corporeal, they do have resistance to most stuff. Non-magical attacks. So, which is the things that most incorporeals have, so I think that'd be good. And then they and their mounts can fly. Why not? Because I want them to be zipping around in the sky. You know, zipping like shadows across the Aurora Borealis kind of situation. And flying down and attacking people. And we'll say tortured mammoth ghosts. Cool. I like it. So what is our cryptic clue? We need a... I'm just going to put it up here because I don't know what that's going to be off our head. Cryptic clue needed as to nature of on flesh curse. Let's say skeletal Pegasi. Pegasus is Pegasi, right? I cannot spell to save my life. Yeah. Alright, yeah, so we have a mammoth graveyard. I need some sort of cryptic clue to give them a nature as to the haunt or the curse that's going on there. There's a apparent death of these mammoths seems to be exposure. They are haunted by their ghost cowboys, those Bodaks on the skeletal Pegasi driving the tortured mammoth ghosts across the sky. Cool. Super, super dope. Weird. Sometimes when we use these tables, we come up with some real weird stuff. This is one of them. But hey, you know, that's good. If it's weird, but seems evocative and fun, that's what we're really looking for. All right. We got 6 more in here. So let's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. Well, I only rolled 1 more point of interest. I rolled a 1, and it's in the very next hex. Everything else was a miss. Let's roll a d20. Let's find out what this thing is. Natural 20! Love it. Some sort of hazard. Right. Our guy, we're going to drop it. Where's our little weather cloud? This is the one we use for hazard. So this is going to be some sort of hazardous area. All right, let's get a feeling it's going to be some sort of natural hazard, supernatural hazard. This is, or an artificial hazard. This is going to be a straight up natural hazard. And I rolled a 16. So what's kind of our theme here? Monstrosity. Cool thing is like once we get into these higher levels, when we run up to something like a hazard or something like that, we have monsters, big BBEG boss monsters, the kind of things that get legendary resistances, legendary actions, those sorts of things, or things that get layers and layer actions. That means any of those creatures usually in D&D also have a regional effect they place on the land. This is where we can pull those in and be like, this is what's happening in the area. There must be one of these types of creatures in the area. And that becomes kind of a adventure for you to be like, can we fix what's going on here? Sometimes we don't have to do that. But this is going to be a natural thing, so that makes the most sense to me that we're going to do monstrosity. Down here, hazard. Hazard. Monstrosity theme. We'll check out that in a minute. Let's go ahead and look at the rest of our stuff here. And natural 20 for hazard. Alright, let's roll 2d6. There we go. I rolled a 1 and a 4, so it could be a creature, burrow, den, hunting ground, nest, or warren. Absolutely makes sense. That's basically a layer. It's just not going to be like a dungeon kind of layer. Or air or atmosphere. Something that deals something with air or atmosphere, and maybe it's coming from wherever this creature is burrowed. Let's take a look at some guys. We need some monstrosities. We need monstrosities. And again, we've got that aquatic, the arctic, the coastal. I think that's really everything that's out here. Yeah. Fine. Of course, we could go big swinging on Trask or Kraken, but I don't think we're going to do that. I do love me a good Rimmeraz. And they make sense because they just boil stuff up. So it could be like a boiling sea. That'd be pretty cool. It makes sense. We could also use a Hydra. We're really losing a lot of monstrosities. Now, here's what we can do. We can also just not care about these native environments. Sometimes if things get too thin, we just go, that doesn't really make sense. Pull things out for us. Okay. We can have a Sphinx, a purple worm, the angry, T. But here would be cool. And we can still use that boiling sea thing because they're lightning based. Or just a forever winter storm. That'd be pretty cool too. Rocks. Ooh, a frog he-myth might be fun. Or Naga. Nagas are fun. I don't feel like I use Nagas ever. Maybe I'll do a Naga. Let's get a Guardian Naga. Poisonous spittle, spell casting, thaumaturgy, clairvoyance, cure wounds, flame strike. Yes, you're seeing. Okay. I hate when it does this. I don't know how to get to. Because one of the things I I struggle with 5e tools, in particular this website, is that I don't know how to get to this page, which gives me more stuff about this, not just the stat block. So we're gonna use the Yugadia Naga. Wise and good? We'll see. Intelligent serpents inhabit the ruins of the past, amassing arcane treasures and knowledge. Great as immortal guardians by humanoid race long lost to history. Rightful inheritors of the master's treasure. They never feel the ravages of time or succumb to sickness. Even if struck down, the Naga's immortal spirit reforms the new body in a matter of days, ready to continue its eternal work. Yes. Benevolent dictators and brutal tyrants. Yep, makes sense. Naga rules its domain with absolute authority. Whether it rules with compassion or by terrorizing its subjects, the Naga believes itself the master. Okay. But I don't think... Let's see if they... I don't think that... Yeah, they don't really have legendaries, right? Maybe I can just do Naga. Regional effects, because I don't know what those are. Yeah. Giants in the playground. And Guardian Naga Legendary. I like this. Let's see what's going to be fun stuff in here. Special actions, bonus actions, regional effects. The region containing any of the Naga's lair is not directly influenced by the creature's presence. However, the Naga often secures the area of repeated castings of Forbiddance, Glyph of Warding, Hallow, and similar spells. What does the Forbidden spell do? That's a cool idea. Alright, now this is the 5e version. I don't know if it's changed in 2024. You ward against magical travel that protects up to... they can't port into there. You can't plane out of it. And you can't do things like Misty Step or anything. No plane shift. It also means that, like, you can't travel like a phase spider that shifts into the ethereal plane and wouldn't be able to do that either. In addition, the spell damages types of creatures that choose when you cast it. Choose one or more of the following. Blah, 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 blah. When the creature... but none of those are humanoids. Enters the spell's area for the first time on a turn. Starts to turn there and takes 5d10 radiant or necrotic, your choice. Can't overlap with the area of another forbidden spell. If you cast Forbiddance every day for 30 days in the same location, the spell lasts until it is dispelled. The material components are consumed on the last casting. Oh, so you only have to spend them once. Nice. And what are the material components? A sprinkling of holy water, rare incense, and powdered ruby worth at least 1,000 gold. Oh, that's not too bad. You only have to spend 1,000 gold to get this forever. It is a 6th level spell. I guess that makes sense. Okay, that kind of gives us a little bit of idea. I like the idea. I think I'm going to make this, what this is... I think it's going to be like more of a Bermuda Triangle aspect. I think it's what we're going to lean into here. And by Bermuda Triangle, I mean aka Domains of Dread Barovia. Being like, you're going to move into like the mist and it's going to be really, really difficult to get out of here. Like, the Naga kind of traps you within here. Within its domain in this sort of swirling... I guess fog. Fog makes sense to me. Just as this pocket of fog. Low-hanging fog. I like it. So this is going to be... Fog cloud. We'll just put this in here. Bermuda Triangle. Flash. Pocket Dimension... a la Barovia. I'll actually put this all on the second line. And I think that there's probably going to be like tons of shipwrecks here and stuff like that. Very Bermuda Triangle. We'll say this is a regional effect. Guardian Naga. Just one. It's probably multiple, right? Because Guardian Nagas are not... only level 10s. So Guardian Naga here. Be pretty trivial for those guys. I can't trust this though. I would have to use the... I keep forgetting to do that. I don't like... So, Kobold Fight Club updated to the 2024 encounter building rules, which I find to not work at all. I find that that is the easiest way for me to kill an entire party very, very quickly. It's by following those rules. I need to know, like, how many Naga we're talking about here. Encounter building... builder. Because I think it's this one. Right? Why is it looking all funky like this? Yeah. One of these days I'll learn how to spell. Is it this one? Good. Features. Why is this not working correctly for me? Alright, I don't know. This might be because I'm using opera instead. That this is working so strangely. Usually you can throw... I like this one because you can throw it in there and it will show you both. And the encounter budget for both 2014 and 2024, which is much more useful. So I know if I'm kind of falling in the in-between, it's going to be... But because, unfortunately, the 2024 one is probably going to have maybe like... Oh yeah, your party can definitely... A part of 11th level characters can definitely take on 4 Guardian Nagas. I'm going to guess is probably going to get them immediately murdered. So, since I don't know what it is off the top of my head... of Guardian Nog, and we're just gonna put a little... There we go. Could be one, could be more. I don't need to know what that is right now. So I can always come back and do that whenever this actually comes up and becomes a problem later. They might have some sort of sea cave or something somewhere that's all you can go to explore. And I think it pulls them into sort of this mystical, through the fog, pocket dimension Bermuda Triangle that's really, really difficult to get out of. And that becomes kind of the adventures. How do we get out of here? Or how do we stop this thing from showing up? Which the Guardian Naga is technically supposed to be good, but I always roll that as like, they could be good. I don't really pay that much attention to them. I mean, it's like, they could be good. But the stat block also said Ruthless Tyrant, so it kind of has the same problem as like, sometimes lawful can be a little too lawful, where you kind of not necessarily good anymore. As is chaotic can be that way too. But yeah, that gives us this next hex done. It took a little bit longer. It always takes a little bit longer when I'm doing the stream though, because we're talking through it and I want to show you the process. Otherwise, this usually doesn't take as long. Not that it is still very slow going. Again, we're only on the 3rd row, and I got a lot of rows to go. So I'll be here for a while. And then, guess what? After this continent, there's an even larger continent that's coming next. So, I know that this is something that will take a very long time to finish, and really I only work on when I have the downtime. But, I think that's where we're going to cut the stream for today. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys. Thanks for hanging out with us, guys. It was a lot of fun. Hopefully you got that stuff that's important about trying to, when you're doing encounter building, instead of building a problem that has a dedicated solution, you're thinking more about building obstacles which can be bypassed in a number of different ways. And when you're not pushing yourself to some foregone conclusion like that, it gives you a lot more wiggle room, that fluid state that we said where you can take that and you can use that challenge and transition into new scenes much more easily, and gives you a lot more flexibility when you're both running the game, and actually takes a lot of load off of you when you're planning games and encounters in games too, because you don't have to be like, okay, when they defeat that, you're like, I don't even know if they're going to fight them. They might talk to them. All I know is that they have a clear goal and they need to get to the goal, and these are things that are in their way. However they get past them is however it happens. If they leave things open to interpretation, I will make that interpretation, and that will change what happens going forward. So maybe those goblins come back with reinforcements. Maybe they run away forever. Maybe you just kill them. Maybe the dice are not with you and these goblins beat your butts, and maybe they chase you off, or maybe they get you to flee or surrender, or you're captured, or I don't have to come up with any of that stuff. That's what the playing part's for. I'm not trying to figure out how the adventure is going to go. I just need to know what's in the adventure. The different shift mindset wise, especially for a new dungeon master, to stop thinking about planning adventures as like A, B, C, D, E is going to happen. Be like, all right, there A, B, C, and D are potential roadblocks to getting to where you're trying to go to, and however you deal with it is however you deal with it. And if you only half deal with it, then half of it's still hanging around and might do something later to you. But that's it for me. Thanks for hanging out, guys. This is always fun, and I'll see you next time. If you like more of this, obviously like this video. If you want more stuff like this, make sure you subscribe. We also have the Twitch streams where I'm doing some video game stuff over there. If you care about that stuff, you want to see more of that, playing that Vampire the Masquerade, checking that stuff out. But that's it for me. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you guys next time. All right? Bye.